But I think the development of full artificial intelligence will spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
With the rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. They were too fast to be in airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
So you said there's light in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0, 1, 1, 0.
Doesn't have your best interest in mind. The government is self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness.
Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and hello to all of you who may also have troubled minds. This show's live. We get together 4 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, to talk about all the things we're not allowed to talk about. You know what they are? Aliens, conspiracy, the paranormal, the government, academia, the 24-hour news cycle, propaganda, and the general feeling that we live in the upside down. We are streaming on Rockfin, D-Live, YouTube, and Twitter. We are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM, and we're taking your phone calls. If you want to be part of the show tonight, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. And you can join the Discord at troubledminds.org. The Discord link and the phone number right on top of the website. You absolutely cannot miss them. And we're streaming on the website as well. So if you never know where to go and you're trying to figure out what's going on, all the different platforms and Fringe FM and all these other things, just go to the website, troubledminds.org, and you'll have a link to Fringe there, a link to everything, and the YouTube stream embedded right on the webpage itself. So, yeah. It's been kind of a good month so far. We're into October, as you all well know. It's October 12th. It's a Tuesday night. And in light of last week, I figured we may as well just burn through some of the paranormal critters out there as part of this conversation. We've kind of done a lot of this in the past, not really in particular, like, let's talk about this thing. More in terms of in the periphery of, well, this is in the news, so this thing kind of came up, so let's talk about this thing. Well, I think we can just throw out all that and just talk about it because it is, again, like I keep saying, we're in October, marching steadily toward Halloween itself, which will be on a Sunday night, and we will be doing our own actual, some kind of Halloween something. So we'll be streaming on that Sunday night, and I figure why not? We haven't, again, there's so many things that kind of in folklore and mythology that we really haven't touched on, including, well, tons of mythology, tons of like actual like ancient myth type stuff from all over the world. I mean, we've done some of that in the past, but there's so much to talk about that why not? I mean, why the hell not? And because especially, like, did I mention it's October? It's October. October baseball, one of the best if your team's in it. But okay, so that's what's going on. That's what's on my mind tonight is let's just talk about this stuff. There's no reason to try and always keep it into the news cycles because, well, we do a ton of that. We do a whole news show on Monday and Friday. And we watch the news cycles very closely anyway. So as something super critical pops up there, we'll be talking about it. And as you know, I try and stay away from politics just because it drives me insane with all the dumb things they talk about. So I figure that's why we did this show. So we could talk about politics if we wanted to. However, there are other things probably more important and pressing and for sure 100% more fun to talk about. And so for tonight, I have this idea. It's not really an idea. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. Howdy, internet people. It's just a thought, if you know the reference there. If you don't, I'm not going to give a plug. But howdy, internet people. But okay, so the thought tonight is this. My mind is on, of course, Halloween. Of course, spooky things. And we've been watching some scary shows, including Midnight Mass on Netflix, if you guys caught that special last night, that we did an extra special stream with Night Stalker and with James of Salcedo Paranormal, talking about Midnight Mass from Netflix. And it kind of got my brain moving and wondering and thinking about all kinds of things because there's a whole lot of themes going through that show. It's pretty well done. And like I said, I'm not going to do any spoilers here tonight regarding that because that entire show we did last night, you can find it on it'll go on the podcast feed tonight, but you can find it on YouTube and on Rockfin currently. But it definitely kind of gets the brain thinking in terms of, you know, spooky, darkness, creatures, things like this. And so I figured, why not? We've done some stories in the past about vampires regarding, in particular, that one vampire, I can't remember his name, but it's basically the vampire that Anne Rice based the vampire Lestat on. And so if you're familiar with Anne Rice and her Vampire Chronicles, you'll know that it kind of began innocuously, very much with the movie and the book, actually, Interview with a Vampire. And so many of you have probably seen that movie. If you get into Anne Rice at all, I highly recommend if you do it right and you just read the books, because those movies, they tried to do a good job, and in my opinion, they butchered them. But of course, the movie is always worse than the book, right? That's just the way it goes. But it got me thinking about not just Anne Rice, but some other things, some other ways that the vampires have kind of been treated in mythology and in folklore, and how far back do these stories go? And if you are reading Anne Rice, it's pretty interesting that I was doing a little cursory research before the show, as I always do, kind of reading some stories and gaining some knowledge, learning some things, getting into the vibe of what we're going to talk about tonight. And it came across to me that it seems like Anne Rice tried to write a comprehensive history of the vampire, and meaning that some of the very earliest vampire stories are actually kind of a parallel to what she's writing, but to what she's been doing. And so again, this show tonight isn't in particular about Anne Rice and her vampires. If you guys don't know, she wrote the Interview with the Vampire and all the rest of that stuff, the Vampire Lestat, and a whole bunch of other stuff, but it is notable that she's probably, in my opinion, the foremost vampire guru today. You can talk about a lot of other things, like we talked about Buffy last night, and there's Twilight and some of the stuff that's kind of bringing the vampire back. We're probably due for another one of those really big blockbuster type vampire movies on the horizon here, but I haven't seen it yet. But every 10 years or so, 10, 12, 15, even 20 years, we'll get like some sort of huge blockbuster vampire type thing. And the last one was Twilight. And I hate to say unfortunately, but I'll say unfortunately because I didn't really enjoy it. I guess maybe it was the high school aspect. But anyway, that's just one dude, one opinion. What can I say? If you liked it, I'm sorry. We can disagree and still be friends, which is, again, is a premise of the show, by the way. We can disagree and still be friends. So anyway, as I'm thinking about this and wondering what's going on with vampires and folklore and mythology, And again, my mind goes back to Anne Rice because she did such a fantastic job. But there are other examples, including that one on Netflix that we talked about recently. Again, no spoilers there. And that's even a monster. I don't even think you can call it that at this point. But point being is this. There's a lot of really, really old stories. And again, so I think the one that was based on, I can look this up real quick actually, but so Anne Rice based her character, the vampire Lestat, I guess I'll say it that way. I'm not sure how to say the French version of that because he was actually originated in France, of all places. And so the interesting part is she based that character on a recurring folklore in New Orleans regarding a particular vampire that is spotted in some of the celebrations down there, Mardi Gras, different parts of the of New Orleans itself. And interestingly, they say that they see this individual kind of standing in crowds, watching people, kind of moving out of time, kind of out of sync with time, meaning that he can move faster than regular people. So he's moving at sort of these supernatural speeds. And they say that this individual in New Orleans, actually, it has been part of vampire lore there for a couple hundred years. And they say the original came from France, very much like Anne Rice's vampire, the vampire Lestat. So interestingly, there are some parallels here in the real world that, like I said, it seems like maybe Anne Rice is, of course, way ahead of me for sure, 100%, but probably ahead of most people when it comes to not just modern folklore, but also ancient mythology, talking about the ancient Egyptians and way back to Mesopotamia and some of those actual stories regarding vampires. So we'll go through some of that stuff tonight and talk about where this originated from. Of course, the one we know the most and are the most familiar with is the European version of the vampire. I want to suck your blood. That guy with the cape and the big collar and turns into a bat and all those really bad movies. Nosferatu back in the day, things like this. But it's not as simple as just the European vampire. That's the one we know probably the most well, but there are different versions of this all over the world that go back hundreds and thousands of years. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff tonight. And of course, that's what's on my mind. And the questions, of course, because as you know, this is a conversation. This goes two ways. If you're out there listening to me right now, again, it's Tuesday night, October 12th, and we're talking about vampires tonight. But the question is this for you. So we'll start with the same way we did the werewolves. What's your favorite vampire movie? What's your favorite vampire mythos in pop culture? And if you like Twilight, that's okay. Well, like I said, we can still get along. And if that's your favorite, that's totally cool by me. But point being is that so what is your favorite vampire movie and the mythology that has been written in pop culture? And then this: do you think there's actually some truth to a supernatural creature that lurks in the dark and actually drinks blood? Or how about a psychic vampire that saps energy from people in some other way? I think that's the question, right? Is do you think this is real? And I've heard people describe. We could even talk about psychic vampires in a way that they just sort of drain energy, and maybe some people use this as a spellcraft or a witchcraft, or I'm not sure what you want to call this, but just a weirdness of how when you're around a particular person and they're just exhausting to be around. And it's not necessarily maybe that it's a spell casting sort of thing, but maybe it's just they're exhausting to be around. But it sure feels like they're sapping your energy, right? It sure feels like they thrive when you're tired, and they thrive on wearing you out, things like this. There are people that exist out there like that. And so I don't know, right? Is that part of this conversation, or is it not? Is it not at all? And those are just some of the questions on my mind tonight. But as you guys know, as we go through this conversation goes two ways. And if you want to be part of it, it is nonlinear, it is open-ended, it is wherever we want to take it, and that means you as well. So if you have some ideas about vampires, we could talk about Vlad Tepes, of course, which was the original Vlad the Impaler. Whatever you want to talk about. There you go. Matt, what's up? Says, I know a couple of psychic vampires. And kind of that, right? So just think in terms of an entity that derives its energy from the energy of other people, right? And so whether you think that's a supernatural thing or whether you just think it's a let's say a skill, communication skill in this day and age, that maybe that's where this conversation will go. We don't know. It's up to you again, as you guys know, and so that's what's going on. So there's a lot to this. Like I said, as we begin, I'll get into some of the mythology here, but my mind does go back to Dungeons and Dragons a little bit as well, being that I played Dungeons and Dragons quite a bit when I was a youngster, and back in the Satanic Panic of the 80s, if anybody remembers that. And there was a whole lot of I bring up Gary Gygax from time to time, the original Dungeon Master, the guy who actually wrote a lot of that mythology, and he basically borrowed a ton, not even borrowed, probably like straight facsimile, straight just ripped it from a lot of mythology and folklore. And I do have an admiration for that man, because I can't even imagine going through so many folklore the world over, trying to find different monsters just to create something as vast and expansive as the first monster manual, right, back in the 1980s. If any of you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's basically just a game. It's a role-playing game based on sort of an upside-down world where all of this stuff is real, where vampires and werewolves and all these things actually exist. But it's further than that. It goes as far as you want to take it, because it's the only limits are your imagination, and so that's very much like this show. Really, it goes as far as you want to take it, considering a bunch of these things. So anyway, that's what's on my mind tonight. We'll get into some of this and where it began, the history of the vampire, and of course, like I said, the questions are: what is your favorite vampire flick? Your favorite vampire mythology from pop culture, and whether that's Buffy or Twilight or Anne Rice or you name it, whatever it's going to be, back to the old school days of the black and white movies. You tell me. And if you want to be part of the show, one more time, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. See you guys there in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for showing up. Let's start with this one. This was oddly enough, if you can believe this, on Oprah Daily. Oprah Daily. And I wonder if it's that Oprah or if it's a different Oprah. But anyway, it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't much matter. I just never expected to see something as comprehensive as the history of vampires on Oprah's website, the Oprah Daily. Is that what this is? Anyway, we'll go to this. What's up, Fright Night? Got some Queen of the Damned, got some Underworld, got some all this going, some ideas going in the chat out there. What's going on, guys? I see everybody out there. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for hanging out. And all right, so that's what we're going to do. Let's dive into just a little bit of this on where this began. And like I said, I've got some. It's interesting. It's interesting how there's some parallels here to the Anne Rice mythologies. So here we go. Up until the 20th century, many people believed vampire stories were true. Across cultures and continents, the power of vampire-like ghouls were blamed for phenomena that there weren't yet medical explanations for, such as the spread of disease during the Middle Ages, or what happens to the human body after death. But by the 1800s, authors like Bram Stoker, of course, who gave us one of the most famous vampire stories in history, created a sexier alternate narrative. And now vampires weren't serpentine predators, but tortured romantics who never age, often wealthy and attractive to boot. And this is well written. This is by Samantha Vincenti, and this was August 10th of 2020. Pretty good stuff here. And so again, going back to the very first vampire story, I was trying to find this like we were doing the other time with we did it with werewolves. I at least found an ancient word of mouth type Native American story regarding the first werewolf, and I thought it was pretty fascinating. And whether it was the first actual movie or the first tale of werewolves themselves, at least was an origination story of where werewolves came from. I kept doing that last time too. Every time I tried to say werewolf, vampire came out of my mouth. So I'm going to just do it tonight as well. What the hell while we're at it, right? Well, while I'm butchering all this, I just may as well just completely butcher it. But anyway, here we go. So the image of the seductive night walkers we think of today was majorly shaped by pop culture dating back to the 1800s. But seeds of the modern concept have appeared in mythologies since the beginning of recorded history. Now check this out. This is pretty cool. The story of Sekhmet, the Egyptian feline warrior goddess associated with both plague and healing, is considered by some to be one of the oldest vampire tales. Legend holds that the sun god Ra sent his daughter Sekhmet down to punish humankind for their disobedience. But after Sekhmet couldn't stop drinking blood amid her slaughter, Ra quelled her planet-draining thirst by dyeing a bunch of beer red. And basically, she guzzled it and slept for 3 days. And pretty great, crazy stuff here. So, and that's, again, so this goes way back. We're talking about ancient Egypt. We're talking about vampire stories. And so it's not just that. Like I said, there's you can trace some of these that go way, way, way back. And the interesting part too, like I said, if you guys are not familiar, I'm not gonna throw out a ton of Anne Rice spoilers or anything. But her origination story actually does go back to ancient Egypt as well, and so there's they're called Akasha and I can't remember the other guy's name, Enkill actually. So it's interestingly, Enki is a Babylonian, right? Anyway, it's Akasha and Enkil, Enkil is the first two vampires in her mythology, and it does date back to ancient Egypt. So, like I said, I don't think it's an accident that she kind of weaves historical fiction, mythology, all into the same amazing prose that she does in these amazing novels. Because, well, yeah. So there's one actual origin story, and that dates back to the ancient Egyptians and their mythology. Okay. Here's another one. Lilith, a 4,000-year-old figure in Jewish folklore who, in some stories, was Adam's wife before Eve, had a monstrous rep in ancient Babylonia. Her name derives from a Sumerian word for female demons or wind spirits, Lilitu. Lilitu. According to scholar J.A. Skurlock via the Jewish Women's Archive, the Babylonians believed the Lilitu were hungry for victims because they had once been human and slipped through windows into people's houses looking for victims to take the place of husbands and wives who they themselves never had. While the image of Lilith as a deadly, hungry temptress has endured for centuries, and for example, Lilith was the first vampire in True Blood, for example, which I've never seen True Blood, actually. I've heard good things about it, but never watched True Blood. Add that one to the list, right? A subsection of self-identified feminists have embraced her as the first misunderstood feisty lady, inspiring the Jewish American magazine of the same name. Many cultures have some equivalent of a life-draining creature. In the Philippines, for example, there's the Mananagal, I think is how you say it, who some believe can shapeshift into a woman and sucks blood from the bellies of pregnant women. And also, oh, by the way, hates garlic. And so anyway, point being tonight, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to continue thinking about vampires as mythology, as folklore, and of course entertaining the thought that maybe this came from a real story somewhere along the line. So if you guys want to be part of this and you're interested in this, we're also looking for your favorite vampire movies and or mythologies, and that could be all kinds of things. That could be anything in pop culture, movies, and books, and you name it, comics, the whole deal. It's all included, of course, because, well, we consume it all, don't we? But that's the deal. Reading the chat. What's up, guys? I see you guys. We'll come say hi in just a sec. But that's what's on my mind tonight. Vampires, because why not? Like I said, it's we're kind of marching about halfway through the month now, almost. It's October 12th, like I said, marching toward Halloween slowly and surely. So let's get some of these out of the way. We may as well talk about vampires and lay the baseline for a lot of folks that don't really know a ton about this stuff. Maybe, seen some vampire movies or some shows, but kind of don't really have an idea of where some of this stuff came from. So that's really why we have these conversations. I'm not an expert, by the way. I'm not an expert in anything, by the way. I just like to find some of these stories and be able to point them out and say, this looks like maybe this is possibly the oldest thing I could find, right? And that's where we go with it. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Like I said, vampires are on my mind. And of course, it's getting cold and it's getting dark outside. So why the hell not? Let's talk about vampires. Let's talk about your favorite vampire movie and mythology, whether that's books, comics, movies, or anything else. How about your favorite oldest vampire mythology? You tell me. Love to hear from you if you want to be part of the show tonight. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Looking to hear your calls after the break. Be right back. All right, welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, DLive, YouTube, and Twitter. And we are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, we're talking about vampires. Not just your classic European vampire, but vampires from all over the world. Energy vampires, ancient vampires, modern vampires of Pulp Fiction, and the mythologies that go along with all of these tales. Love to hear from you tonight. We're taking your phone calls. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Phone number you can find at troubledminds.org, and we'll put you on the show. Click the Discord link, and there's a easy way in. You just hop into the caller queue, and it works free. It's free. It's not like I said, the 702 area code is a long distance sort of thing, but I bet you that's going away. The internet is making that go away. So 702-957-1037, troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link, and let's keep on trucking. Again, talking about vampires tonight, because for obvious reasons, we have clearly the situation of Halloween coming up. And like I said, in the past, we haven't really done direct shows about things like this. It's more kind of in the periphery, and they come up in conversation. But why not? Why the hell not? We don't need a reason to talk about these things. Nobody tells us what to think or what to say. So screw it. We're going to talk about vampires tonight, and not just not just vampires in mythology, but vampires in pop fiction and all the rest of this. So as we know, like I said, probably the most obvious vampire comes from Europe. That's the one that we know about the most. That's of course the one that's kind of permeated into the subconscious of people. They think of Count Dracula with like I said, changing into a bat with the big cape and the whole deal, and I want to suck your blood and all that stuff. But it's not as simple as that. This story does, like I said, go back thousands of years, of course, to Babylonia and possibly ancient Egypt and some of their actual mythologies and stories. And so that's what's on my mind tonight. Do you prefer like the modern pop culture version of Dracula, Count Dracula, or do you prefer some other strange tales like the one of Sekhmet and Ra from ancient Egypt about Sekhmet coming down to Earth and and trying to eat the blood of all the humans, drink the blood of all the humans, so much that Ra had to trick her by dyeing the beer red and having her think it was blood and knocking herself out with a 3-day drunken stupor. So interesting. Some of these stories, like I said, they kind of go back a long ways, but there's a ton here. Again, I was looking at some of this stuff, and there's this fantastic site, by the way, speaking of like if you want to dig into some of this information about in generic terms, it's called mythos.fandom.com, and it's like a wiki, right? It's one of those situations where you have a whole bunch of people get together and edit, like write articles and edit them and fact check them for each other and all the rest of this stuff. And Wikipedia itself has just turned into a cesspool of that because it's been kind of taken over by political activists, let's say, and so they're rewriting history right before our very eyes, unfortunately, in the Wikipedia sense. But I think the wiki style and the wiki software that allows people to kind of collaborate on particular articles is fantastic when you talk about things like this, because you get a lot of people that know a lot about, or let's say a lot of people know a little bit about something in particular, like a vampire in this instance. They're able to get together very much like we do. I don't know a ton about these things. I'm not an expert in any of these things, but we have some pretty fascinating conversations because we have so many people that know so many different things and have so many different ideas about this that like I always say, the value of people working together, you cannot you just can't deny it. It's definitely a better thing when you get people on the same page, kind of trying to contribute to a more fantastic thing. And so that in this exact case, and I just joined their Discord, by the way. They've got a Discord, and I'm going to link this, and you guys can check this out. This is the actual it's mythos.fandom.com, and it's a wiki used by the wiki software. If you guys probably knew this, you can get the wiki software and put it up pretty much anywhere, host it anywhere, and just get contributors to put up some wiki information on whatever, pretty much whatever. So in this case, it's on vampires. So let's go with this, and let's just start here. Talking about vampires from the old days, and it says it starts in Romanian mythology, and of course we know that story, don't we? That would be Vlad Tepes and that whole Vlad the Impaler bit, but let's read a little bit of this. Like I said, I can do some of this and kind of go through some of the basics here of where these vampire stories kind of came from. But like I said, as always, I'd rather hear your guys' takes on this, your guys' ideas, your guys' theories, your guys' favorite movies, and that's what's on my mind tonight is sort of that vampire vibe. What's going on? Do you think it is more of a scary monster situation, or do you think it's a little bit more like the sexy vampires of the underworld fame? Or Lestat from Anne Rice and that whole bit, and or I don't know, like the teenage vampires with the that whole bit. I don't know from what was it, Twilight. So I don't know. You guys tell me. Anyway, so we're just going to read a little bit from this. And like I said, this is a fantastic site, so give these guys some love. If you want to join their Discord, they're in there sharing information. They're not super active because there's not a ton of members in there yet, but I recommend you guys hop in there and say hi. And so here we go. A vampire is a creature from folklore that subsists by feeding on the vital essence, and I use this actually as half of the blurb to start the conversation, generally in the form of blood, that vital essence of the living. In European folklore, vampires are undead creatures that often visited loved ones and caused mischief or death in the neighborhoods they inhabited while they were alive. They wore shrouds and were often described as bloated and of ruddy or dark countenance, markedly different from today's gaunt, pale vampire, which dates from the early 19th century. What's up, flat fellow? I see you there. What's up, buddy? And so I mean, interestingly, like you see how even the folklore itself changes. If you go back a few hundred years, that the initial vampire was ruddy, bloated, and of dark countenance, and so was actually very different looking, sort of maybe I don't know, like you would expect to see something on Gummy Bears or something, right? I don't know. Anyway, so vampiric entities have been recorded in most cultures. The term vampire itself was popularized in Western Europe after reports of an 18th century mass hysteria of a pre-existing folk belief in the Balkans and Eastern Europe that in some cases resulted in corpses being staked and people being accused of vampirism. Local variants in Eastern Europe were also known by different names, such as the Striga in Albania, how do I say this? Holy moly. Vraikolakos in Greece, and the Strigoi in Romania. And that's what kind of where this stuff comes from. So as you guys know, like I said, these stories, probably the European stuff, doesn't surprise you. You're very, very well versed in this, probably most of you guys. But like I said, what's your favorite? If you have to go back to and pick a point in history where maybe Dracula stepped in from just the stories and rumors and myths to maybe the silver screen, or maybe into Vlad Dracula with Bram Stoker and all the rest of that stuff. What do you think? You guys tell me. One more time, 702-957-1037. And I'm going to just keep going through some of this. I got a bunch of information pulled out, as you know, so I'm going to try and not keep it too generic. We'll get into some more nitty gritty here, including how to become a vampire, which again, as you found out, I was fascinated with how to become a werewolf not too long ago, and we did a show on how to become a werewolf, and if you can become a werewolf, can you be cured? So something there to think about as we go tonight, because I'm going to get into that, because why not? How can you become a vampire? What's up? Carry Out Moth says you can order vampire hunting kits on Amazon made of wood and all that. That's pretty hot. I dig it. All right, so here we go. More of this. So let's see. In modern times, the vampire is generally held to be a fictitious entity, although belief in similar vampiric creatures, such as the chupacabra, still persists in some cultures. Early folk belief in vampires has sometimes been ascribed to the ignorance of the body's process of decomposition after death, and how people in pre-industrial societies tried to rationalize this, creating the figure of the vampire to explain the mysteries of death. Let's see. There's a word I don't know. I'm not going to read that. I'll just skip it, and so I can look smart. The charismatic and sophisticated vampire of modern fiction was born in 1819 with the publication of The Vampire, spelled Vampyre, by the English writer John Polidori. The story was highly successful and arguably the most influential vampire work of the 19th century, and of course followed by Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula is remembered as the quintessential vampire novel and provided the basis of the modern vampire legend. Even though it was published after Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's 1872 novel Carmilla. The success of this book spawned a distinctive vampire genre, still popular in the 21st century, with books, films, television shows, and video games. Yeah. The vampire has since become a dominant figure in the horror genre. And so here we go. So we'll get to this. We're going to get to the good stuff now. So like I said, there's the general basics of what this is, what we're talking about tonight, and why we're doing it. Clearly, because Halloween, like I said, Halloween's around the corner. Let's get this stuff out there. And Troubled Minds, as a particular entity, has never really talked about these things in full. Sort of going through to the mythology, sort of how you become them, what are the powers of a vampire through different mythologies and ideas and pop culture and all the rest of this. So we're going to do some of that tonight. I think it's a little bit fun to just kind of consider where this came from and where it's heading. I guess there are some people that still believe that believe today they are vampires. So that's an entirely other thing too that we could talk about. But yeah, so if you want to be part of the show, love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Vampires and pop culture and you. 702-957-1037 and click the Discord at troubledminds.org. Okay, let's go to this. Let's continue. Again, this is from this mythos.fandom.com. Pretty good stuff. Please give them a little bit of love. Join their Discord. Go say hi. Myths and legends. Okay, this is some of their powers. Okay, which I thought was fun. This is where it starts to get good. So clearly they wore shrouds and were often described as bloated and ruddy and dark countenance, like we said, markedly different from today's gaunt vampire, pale vampire, which dates from the early 19th century. But their powers and abilities, here we go. This is where things start to get good. Vampires are often considered powerful undead in stories and folklore due to their variety of abilities and their near indestructibility. They tend to be extremely difficult to kill. And so the creation of vampires, here's where we get fun. There are a few variations of how vampires come to be, according on the folklore and of course of the region in question. In Slavic and Chinese traditions, any corpse that was jumped over by an animal, particularly a dog or a cat, was feared to become one of the undead. A body with a wound that had not been treated with boiling water was also at risk. That's not the only thing you're at risk of, is it? There's probably something else. Infection and death. But anyway, so in Russian folklore, vampires were said to have once been witches or people who had rebelled against the Russian Orthodox Church while they were alive and had come back due to dark magic. Dark magic, yes. As interestingly, so not only have we talked about that with the werewolves, right? They can be cursed or they can be bitten by a werewolf with the pathogen in their teeth and their saliva to turn people into werewolves. There's more. There's same or similar with the curses and being cursed by the clergy, as it were, or cursed by just the church itself. So here we go. It continues. Let's see. Dark magic. Yeah, come back from dark magic. Here we go. So in more recent lore, vampires are created when a vampire bites and or gives a human their blood, which turns them into a subordinate vampire, sometimes known as a thrall. So there we go. Pretty good stuff. Thanks. Copy that, Derek. Appreciate it. Going to take a break and give us a call a little bit later. So the thing is this. There you go. I actually hadn't been familiar with this, the term thrall, in vampire mythologies because, like I said, I haven't seen a ton of the vampire movies and whatnot. Haven't read a ton of the books. I'm most familiar, probably in depth with like the Anne Rice series. Read a lot of those books, and just because they're very, very good. So I don't know. What do you guys think with this thrall bit? Meaning, so if a vampire bites another person, of course, to get their sustenance, which of course in that case would be their blood, it would be there's a risk of infection, of infecting that person and turning them into a vampire. And there are different ways about this. Of course, we'll get into some of those ways. But in the Anne Rice mythology, it wasn't as simple as that. You could take what they called the little drink. is what they called it, and it was like a taste. It was like kind of just taste testing your buddies or whatever. Your vampire taste testing your human buddies to see what their blood was actually like. And Anne Rice described it as an ecstasy moment, sort of a very erotic situation when you were actually the vampire was linked into into the jugular and just draining the lifeblood of people. It was a very I think they called it like a rapture or something to that effect. But okay, so interestingly, this thrall means that, and actually was looking this up in the Dungeons and Dragons mythology as well, is that if a vampire creates another vampire, that vampire is actually subservient and obedient and under the spell of the initial vampire that created them. And so clearly there are ways, of course, to break that spell. And I was reading some of that, and in the Dungeons and Dragons methodology in this folklore with vampires and whatnot, to break that spell, the master vampire could give his thrall, his or her thrall, some of his own or her own blood. And that would break that spell, so that the vampire, the thrall, the younger vampire itself could actually be autonomous and be its own master. So interesting how we have some of the weirdness of this. I had no idea it was like that. And again, like I'm going to speak to the things I know. So in the Anne Rice mythology, when they created a vampire, it was through not just, you didn't have to just bite the human, you had to drain them to the point of death. Almost to the point where their heart stopped, and then they would slash themselves, and then the person that was almost dead would drink the vampire's blood back, and they'd complete this process several times, and it would, in effect, curse the human and become make them an undead. And so in that thrall sort of mythology where the master vampire creates a subservient vampire, it wasn't like that in the Anne Rice mythology. It was like this, though, where vampires could read minds. They could read the minds of humans freely and easily. And but what would happen is when they created a vampire out of people, that actual ability to read the mind of the individual was no longer there. It would be it would be completely walled off. So interestingly, sort of the same idea, but there are and so it causes that strife that like we talked about, vampires living forever, and sort of that. When we talked about immortality on this show, and that maybe that is a curse in itself, being living forever, right? At least whatever forever means. And so then, of course, it kind of through Anne Rice and late 70s and into the rest of the modern day here, we have these vampires that are kind of moody, that are they feel cursed. They feel like if they want to save people, they live forever, and they see people they love live and die, and they try to save them, and turn them into vampires themselves. But as a result, they're walled off. There's some sort of psychic block once they create these thrall vampires, which of course drives a wedge between their relationship, because it's not so intimate anymore as being able to read each other's thoughts and the rest of that. So crazy stuff. Anyway, just some ideas here. Like I said, I'll talk about what I know the most regarding pop culture, vampires, and this. And like I said, most of that stems from Anne Rice and her books, because they were so good. But like I said, looking to hear from you. What do you guys think? What's your favorite vampire mythology, your favorite vampire show? What do you think about this thrall vampire? Have you heard this before? What about psychic powers? We'll get into some more of this stuff as we go. Like I said, it's a little less fun hearing me talk about it. I'd rather hear you guys talk about it, because you know so much more than I do. But there are different powers. There are different powers they have, including being able to turn into a bat. That's one of them. Into a mist, like a gaseous fog, and kind of escape. Those types of things. Like they said, vampires are mostly impervious to normal ways of death. You can't kill them by stabbing them or punching them or shooting them or any of the rest of that. There's a lot of really, really weird stuff that goes with these stories. So I don't know. You guys tell me. The undead are notoriously difficult to keep dead, as it were, as it were. So there we go. Just hanging out, talking about vampires tonight, doing our thing, and looking to hear from you. So you guys tell me, looking at the chat. Let's check out the chat. Let's see, what do we got? Hang tight, James. I didn't see you in there till just now, so I'll get you in just a sec. I'll keep you till after the break. I don't want to cut you off here. So what we'll do is we'll go to James as soon as we come back on the top of the hour here. But again, what are your thoughts on this? Again, it could be comics. It could be movies, it could be books, it could be mythologies, it could be folklore from real folklore, it could be all over the place. Speaking of which, Rivers, what's up, Rivers says, in the chat, Eastern vampires are humans who die from a tragic death, buried and exposed in fully yin energy feng shui location, absorbed night and moon energy that transformed from that. Let's see. Okay, good stuff, good comment. I didn't know that. And I think, again, there's probably, because we're talking about the undead, right? In basic terms, the vampire is sort of an offshoot from the zombie, right? Just the basic zombie of, think about the old days. If you buried, the dead and they came back, pretty terrifying, right? So I don't know. I think that's the type of thing that we're kind of looking at, and vampire mythologies the world over. So, what's your favorite spot here? Is it going to be old? Is it going to be new? Is it going to be mythology? Is it going to be pop fiction? And what do you know about vampires? And of course, as you know, we drink a ton of the maybe juice on this show, and the question is this: not just this. There are many other questions here, but do you think it's possible that at some point, and maybe even currently, that vampires may be real? And that's what we're doing. So we're kicking that, talking about that tonight, and just hanging out with our friends. Let's see. All right, let's go back to this real quick and just do some more about their powers and abilities, and how vampires are created. So here we go. So vampire bites, which give human blood and then turns them into a subordinate vampires known as the thrall. So there's other ways, right? In the old days, they used to do different things to keep just their regular, the deceased from becoming vampires. And ways they used to do that is they would bury a corpse upside down, place agricultural objects by the grave to appease the spirit itself or potential demons. Another one would be severing the tendons at the knees or spiking the head, body, or clothes to the ground to keep them from rising. And of course, we do know the standard of driving the wooden stake through the heart, things like this. And so it's all good. Cool. I could go to 11. Man. Whenever you want to call is fine. Whenever you want to call. Okay, here's another one. Scattering small grains such as rice, poppy seeds, millet, or sand, or on the ground near the grave, which would keep the vampire occupied, counting the grains all night, which is Europe and Chinese lore, or place a wax cross and piece of pottery with the inscription, Jesus Christ conquers, on the corpse. So as you can see, lots of ways here that they've tried in the past to keep vampires rising from the grave. And I think there's a whole lot here just because it kind of fits. It fits the spooky season. It fits some pretty odd ideas that we have on this show. And it fits the concept of maybe juice. And what that means is we just consider all the possibilities. And one of those possibilities is this. Do you believe at some point vampires were actually real? At some point in history, or some point currently, or anywhere in between? And what's your favorite vampire movie and mythology? Looking to hear from you guys tonight. If you want to be part of the show, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. And just looking to hear your ideas on this. And we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back at the top of the hour with more vampires, troubled minds, your calls, and more conversation. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. More troubled minds after the break. are talking about the alien abduction phenomenon.
The aliens are looking through your eyes and they're accessing your optic nerve. I'm doing that. And through that optic nerve, they're transferring to your brain. People are random images as they traverse neurons in the brain.
Alright, so maybe
and they also feel them planting or
broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth.
Hello?
1 second.
And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness.
All right, good evening and welcome back to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and this is the show where we talk about all the weirdness, and that's what we're doing tonight. We are streaming on Rockfan, D-Live, YouTube, and Twitter. We're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. We're taking your phone calls if you want to be part of the show tonight. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. And we are talking about vampires. Yep, that's right. Those vampires. Mythology, their powers, pop culture, all of it. And that's what we do. We drink a hefty dose of the maybe juice and consider all the things. So as we're doing that, let's go to some phone calls. We've got Derek in Massachusetts, the Night Stalker. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you tonight?
Going on, Mike. Great show tonight.
Thank you. Go right ahead. I know you got limited time, my man.
Yeah. So I'm a big vampire fan, or I kind of was when I was a kid, I guess. It's like the closest thing I see to like a superhero in the supernatural world. You know, it's kind of, it's like the most human, but that's also like a product of growing up in the time that I was. Like I'm in the Buffy era of vampires, you know? So in that one, like, two of the main characters are essentially like superheroes, you know, Angel and Spike, and they both end up having souls, like, by the end of the show, you know? So they really make it seems like the trajectory of a vampire has gone from, like, monstrous beast, like, cursed to walk the night and feed off everyone and, like, is hideous and disgusting, to, like, this sexualized, like, almost, like, just like a gothic version, like, not even, like, gothic, because, like, the Twilight version really weren't gothic, but just this, like, I don't know, like, sad guy with powers, I guess. Like, they really neutered the vampire. But with that being said, my favorite vampire ever is probably Spike from Buffy. And but other than him, Blade from Marvel canon, like the Blade movies, and Blade from Marvel Comics is up there. He's a daywalker, and I relate to him being a ginger myself, you know, a daywalking ginger. So if you want, I can give the origin of, like, how you become or the first vampire origin in Marvel, if you want, real quick.
Sure. Yeah. What's that look like?
Okay. So in Marvel, there's, like, two different kinds of vampires. There's Blade, who's, like, born a vampire. He's a daywalker because his mother was, like, bitten by a vampire while she was pregnant with him, or, like, giving birth to him. So he came out, like, half vampire, half human, so he can, like, walk in the sun and that kind of stuff. But he's cursed to drink blood. So, but also they have Morbius in Marvel, which is, like, a product of a experiment gone wrong, and he has to, like, drink blood because of the experiment. I think he was trying to, like, cure his disease or something like that, and it ended up giving him some kind of, like, blood virus or something, which is a big trope in vampire lore. Like, there's a show, V Wars, on Netflix, which is all about that. I think they're trying to come up with a cure for something, and like cancer or something, and then they end up getting infected with, like, patient 0 of this vampire virus, and it ends up, like, spreading all across the world, you know. But for Marvel, from Marvel Wiki, the first generation of vampires appeared in the legendary city of Atlantis, roughly 15,000 years prior to modern times. A circle of Atlantean sorcerers uncovered a book known as the Darkhold, which is basically the Necronomicon for Marvel, an indestructible grimoire of shadowy magics written by the elder god Chthon, which is like Cthulhu from Marvel. In the midst of a war, these sorcerers utilize the resurrection ritual described in the text to raise their fallen enemies in hopes of creating a legion of unkillable soldiers. However, due to the dark influence of Chthon, these undead were too powerful for their would-be masters. In an act of rebellion, these vampires slew all of the sorcerers, with an exception of one, the priest Varney, the first vampire who used the spell to save himself from death. With Atlantis sinking below the sea, Varney and his kin fled the continent and spread across the world. So in that mythology, they like it's in order to like bring yourself back to life, to create like reincarnation or like resurrection. But they get the power from the Necronomicon or the Darkhold, this like evil magic, basically. So a lot of vampire mythology seems to be like it's a price you pay for having to like for immortality, like almost like a sell your soul type deal. Like you get to live forever, but the life you're living is not even a life. You're the living dead. You have to feed. You can't ghost anybody. You have to feed off them. And then most mythologies, you don't even have a soul to begin with, so you don't even really care. You know. Do you have anything to say about that first before I keep rambling?
No, keep going. Keep going.
All right. And Buffy, who's like my favorite one, and we talked about it last night on the Midnight Mass thing. Like the original vampires in that mythology, there was a time, like a primordial time in the earth when like the earth was ran by these like giant titans, these like Lovecraftian old ones. And in the mythology, which is essentially just a Lovecraft mythology, they call them ancient ones, and they're like forced out of the mortal realm when like the age of man starts coming up. And the last purebred like titan old one, when he was on his way out, he bit a human and mixed their blood. So you have to do the same, like the vampires in Buffy. It's the same way. You have to be drained to the point of almost death, and then you have to feed on the vampire again, and then you die and you come back like below, like you come back from like a couple days later or whatever, depending on the episode. But in that mythology, the last one he mixed his blood on his way out, and then that creates the first vampire, who from the get-go is considered a lesser demon. He's like shunned by the other demons because he's mixed with human blood. So no demons and no vampires in that entire show are pure. They're all like this kind of human hybrid, you know. So like kind of the lore that would like kind of gets my brain tingling the most is some kind of like ancient like contract or ancient like arrangement or ancient spell that kind of went awry, that forced maybe a specific like bloodline or family or something to create like in exchange for power, they like lost a piece of their soul and ends up having to like kind of like feed off other life energy in order to survive, you know.
Yeah, that's similar to Anne Rice. I can fill you
exactly. Yeah.
But go ahead, continue. Like I said,
yeah, I think Joss Whedon he kind of borrowed a lot from Anne Rice and borrowed a lot from the Lost Boys, which might have borrowed from Anne Rice too. But again, like in pop culture, the Lost Boys, I'm just kind of just rambling through some notes I took. The Lost Boys is coming out, so you were looking for like what's the next vampire epic that's coming, and I think like media is trying to figure that out too. So they're throwing a few like nothing new under the sun when it comes to Hollywood right now. So they're just rebooting and remaking everything. So they're going to toss the Lost Boys at us. They're going to toss the Interview with the Vampire at us on the CW, I think. All kinds of stuff. For recommendations, there's a BBC Dracula show on Netflix, which is like really, really good. It's only 3 episodes long, and it's awesome. Really, really awesome. And this current season of American Horror Story is like split into 2 parts. The first part is about like their own little take on vampires and how it could actually be happening in the real world. And like it's artists have to take this pill, and the pill makes them like their creativity, like it's like a muse. It's like gives them the full capabilities of all their creativity, so they can create, like essentially alluding to the fact that like everyone in Hollywood who actually creates good stuff is taking this pill and feeding on human blood. And then the ones who don't have this natural creativity, they take the pill and they turn into monsters who are just these zombies essentially who walk around and have to feed blood, you know. So in that they make it seem like you get something out of it. Like blood is like a fuel for their like some kind of metaphysical powers, you know, some kind of like something else. And it makes me wonder, like, is there like a lot of my like Blade and Buffy and Angel both have like the elites are pretty much run by vampires basically. Like in Blade, the vampires have like permeated throughout the culture, so they're running like Fortune 500 companies, and they're running the police, and they're running governments and that kind of stuff. And then in Buffy, they have like a law firm that like essentially takes care of like all their business and gives blood to like these high level people. And it makes you wonder, like, is there some kind of shadowy underbelly that like is like these people that go missing all the time? Are they just acting as blood bags for people, or are they, what's the deal, you know? And for like one real like I know I'm rambling, I gotta get going, but there's like for like real human, like real world vampirism, there's something called the Renfield syndrome, which is based on like Renfield from Dracula, who like gets like sent bugs and stuff. He's like a bug eater. He gets sent bugs from Dracula to like feed on, to like in the meat, and to like acquire taste for bugs, or like he's halfway in between vampire and human. So like he keeps going to send like bugs and cats and bats and all that kind of stuff to feed on their blood as like an initiation in order to become a vampire. And like in the real world, there's people who believe at least that they have to feed on human blood in order to survive, you know? So like growing up in high school and stuff, there was a few different kids from like my class who wanted to be vampires, and they all like hung out together and stuff. And I think that they drank each other's blood and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think none of them believed that they needed it. I think they were just like, I don't know, weirdos. And like, I don't think any of them are vampires anymore, but
right.
But as far as like celebrities and stuff is concerned, like somebody's got a call about that kind of dark stuff, you know. But this is like not a conspiracy. This is mainstream news that came out like maybe like last year in Hollywood. But Armie Hammer, the actor, he got like canceled pretty much this past year because he got in trouble for a bunch of his like previous girlfriends and like people he was in relationships with came out saying he has a fetish for like drinking blood and cannibalism, and like during like sex acts and stuff he'll take bites out of the women, you know. And then there was an interview, I can post a link in the chat after, there's an interview from Page 6, which was like a mainstream Hollywood magazine, like online magazine, saying like interviewing a Hollywood dominatrix, like a high level Hollywood dominatrix, who's saying in the interview that like she like the crux of it is that she is shocked that the masses, like the American people, are taken back by celebrities drinking blood. She says like if you're in that world, if you're amongst her and her other dominatrix friends, it's almost like a par for the course. It's a very, very common, apparently, as far as she says, within the high upper echelon elite Hollywood circles, you know. And it makes you wonder, like, and if you get that bored and you're doing such creepy stuff, how long before you start sipping on each other's fluids and then acquire a taste for it? And I don't know, dark stuff. But I know James is behind me. I just wanted to break the ice and everything. But
I appreciate it.
It's a great show.
Thank you.
Sorry I'm rambling and everything, but I had to be quick.
You're good. Great stuff as always.
Later,
I appreciate you being prepared. Derek from Massachusetts, a nice talker. Have a great night, man. There you go. So I want to point out too that he noted some mythological beginnings of vampires, and so like I said, being most familiar with Anne Rice, she actually described the first vampire as a nature spirit, as a maybe something that had been on the earth for millions of years. Before people, before animals, it was lonely. It was by itself. And as people developed and all the rest of this, this thing started wanting a body for itself, this nature spirit that was sort of like in terms of the wind, okay? Sort of it would show up and the leaves would start rustling and you would know it was around as it kind of cruised in. And what would happen is this thing became sort of like a poltergeist. It would show up and start smashing things and like trying to get people's attention. And it would get so caught up into like the fervor of the haunting that it was doing, that it would sort of do this whirlwind around the people and prick their skin with little sticks and rocks and things and cause them to bleed. And it was able to taste their blood. And this is actually how they described the first vampire in Anne Rice. And this is from Queen of the Damned, by the way, the book. Like I said, that's why you should not watch the movies if you're into Anne Rice. Read the books. and that this vampire eventually haunted this place, and Akasha and Enkil actually went in there, and the rest is history. And it actually entered into them because they kind of invited it. And anyway, so there we go. I appreciate the call. We're taking your phone calls tonight. We're talking about vampires. We're talking about mythology. We're talking about folklore. We're talking about different vampires the world over. We're talking about whatever you want to talk about, basically. If you got, manga or who knows, comics or whatever. Like tons of good stuff here in pop culture to talk about with vampires, movies, books, the whole deal. So taking your phone calls at 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Sorry about that, MJ. We're going to go to James. If you want to call back, man, love to put you on. So let's go to James, James of Salcedo Paranormal. Whenever you're ready, my friend, and we'll get you on the show. What's up? What's up, James? Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you for having me.
Aha, no. The pleasure's ours, sir. Go right ahead. What do you think about this vampire stuff, man? I'm sure you probably, I know you're kind of in the same vein as Derek there with the being familiar with the Marvel comics and the lore and the rest of that. What do you think with that and beyond?
Well, it's funny. The first thing that I went to was actually not even Marvel, but it was out of Stephen King's books. Starting with Salem's Lot. I'm sure some people have heard of that.
Definitely.
But then also they have a place in general in his Dark Tower series of books, novels, and they have a whole classification system. There's like 3 different kinds. Which I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
No. Can you give us the brief version of that?
Yeah, I will, because I found this thing online. I'll share the link after. But so it says type 1s. Let's see, there's a menu there. Sorry about that. Okay. Type 1s are the lesser demons, the last remnants of the Prim, which is like basically magical creatures that are here before creation and evolved when the multiverse was made. So it gets into metaphysical, cosmic stuff even. But this is all too complicated. It looks like to read it all, but the point is, it looks like there are lesser and greater kinds of these vampires, and some are smart, and they can they're like the one that was behind everything. I believe in Salem's Lot was a type 3, which means like the most advanced type in a way. So yeah, just interesting. I'll share the link that I found, but it's just interesting that there's such a part of so many different popular pop culture stories and universes in that way.
Yeah, and interesting too. I've never read Salem's Lot. I'm vaguely familiar with it, but I haven't actually delved into that. It's been years. That's an old one. But notably too, like you're describing, there are different powerfuls, different levels of power in these things, and it's the same thing with Anne Rice. It was basically the way she put it was, the more ancient the vampire, the more powerful they were. It was as simple as that. And she kind of tests the limits of that with her, vampire Lestat, who wanted to challenge all the limits. He wanted to find out, can you actually die? And he did stupid things like walk out into the sun to prove it, right? And things like this. But I think it's pretty amazing that there seems to be some coherent, even with different mythologies and different, Stephen King or Anne Rice or Blade or this or that or the other thing. There seems to be kind of a recurring theme in many cases of not just that, but other of that same, the stake through the heart, or possibly silver, or the cross, and things like this. Pretty amazing stuff, huh?
Yeah, just found. I wasn't reading this right, but yeah, it basically still applies to what I said. But yeah, there are limited ones that can. What's interesting is when it comes to the ones that can walk in the daytime, those are apparently not as smart as some of the other kinds, but they're still like part human. So that's interesting that in the Marvel case, some of them are, and I guess maybe the difference is that like Blade was born from a person, from a human and a vampire. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. There's just so many different intricacies apparently to all this. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask, right? As always, we say that all the time on this show. Drinking baby juice is fine, and it always depends on who you ask. Some people will tell you, Mike, you're stupid. Vampires aren't real. Other people will tell you, Mike, hold on now. Vampires are totally real, right? As always, it just depends on who you ask. So what would be your favorite then? Your favorite vampire mythology, favorite movie, favorite any of the rest of them?
Well, my favorite movie is actually the same as the one it was for the werewolves episode. That would be Underworld, just because there were the two groups and they were fighting each other, but they were also, sometimes they would work with each other. There was a weird relationship between the two groups. And I'm always interested in the whole intrigue and plots, and that's just my thing. So, but also it was interesting to see them in modern times. So, but yeah, that was my favorite. And then, of course, Salem's Lot was the first book I ever read as far as an adult book. I actually read that in middle school, so probably too early. But,
I told you that goes way back. I told you.
Yeah.
We're old, James. We're old.
That was back in the 90s when I read it. And
nice. Nice, yeah, good stuff. I like and you're responsible too for the what's the lady's name in Underworld? What's the actress?
Kate Beckinsale.
Yes, you're responsible for the Kate Beckinsale that's hitting my newsfeed constantly now. That's all. Like
mine too.
I get it. Yeah, you too. Yeah. See, we just talked about it on one. I haven't even looked up Underworld or anything. Like we just talk about it on the show, and then they start feeding me Kate Beckinsale like articles. So it's like, what the hell? My
defense, I was not the only one in chat that day to mention that.
That's true. My defense. I'm really not complaining because she's a fine young lady, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, okay, like where did this come from? and like we always say, they're listening, guys. They're listening. They're totally listening. All right, so good stuff, man. We got like a minute left. Anything else about vampires and the rest of this?
Oh, that's it. But that's a great topic. I think it can connect to so many other things in the paranormal, and love hearing all the calls. Great stuff.
Right on. And thank you for calling. And everybody, this is James of Salcedo Paranormal. Please check out his podcast. Link is down below. You can find it on Rockfin and also YouTube. Just scroll down. And also we have a new YouTube account today. We'll talk about that after we come back if you want to help somebody else who also calls into the show all the time. Thank you so much, James of Salcedo Paranormal. Check out his podcast. Give him some love. Join his Discord. And he goes 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thanks, James. You were the best, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. There you go. Simple as that. See, we just get together and talk about weird stuff. That's what Troubled Minds is all about. And friends of Troubled Minds. And of course, that's you. So if you want to be part of the show, we're still talking about vampires tonight. We're talking about the mythologies, not just from pop culture and maybe European or even back to Egyptian or Babylonian. The origins of vampires. We're talking about the powers they may have, all the way up through pop fiction, popular culture, and of course, whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to think about. What's your take on this? Do you believe vampires are real at any point in history? One more time, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More after the break. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, DLive, YouTube, and Twitter. We're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM, and we're taking your phone calls tonight as we talk about vampires. That's right, vampires. Do you think they've been real at any point in history? Do you want to talk about your favorite vampire movie or anything else in pop culture, comics, books, you name it, or the history of vampires themselves. That's what we're here doing, including Dungeons and Dragons. I'm adding that to the mix because why the hell not? 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. You can also join us by going to troubledminds.org and clicking the Discord link, troubledminds.org. Phone number and the Discord link are right there on top of the website. You cannot miss it. Let's go to our good friend Joe in Florida. Joe, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Not too bad. Good evening, everyone.
I see you're in the spirit, my friend.
I'm actually low energy today.
Gotcha.
But, it's I can never put my finger on it, but I would believe it. I like to believe the mythos of it. I would think that a vampire in the times of Vlad the Impaler and all of those things, I mean, we know that he existed. He impaled people, I think, so much more. I think it was the Muslims turning around and left. They weren't going to mess with that guy because he was crazy. But as much as the story is bad enough, these stories become exaggerated throughout time, just like the Krampus or any other, folklore, I guess. But as far as what the vampires do, whether it's blood, physically when we see a TV show and they're taking blood and drinking blood, one thing that none of us have really touched on up till now, I guess, is energy. And as far as the show lately that I've been watching, and it's kind of funny, I've watched What We Do in the Shadows. There's the movie, which was kind of campy. It's all campy, but the movie was okay. But the show on FX has its moments, but there's a vampire in the group that is called an energy vampire. And he could daywalk and everything, but his magical power is he can walk during the day. He has a regular job, typically an office job, and he drains people just by getting their attention and boringly talking to them so they literally fall asleep.
Like I was saying, just being around somebody was enough to drain you. Wait. So you said you've got low energy. Were you around an energy vampire today? No, you go ahead. Sorry. You said you had low energy. Were you around this guy today?
Well, yeah, no. I didn't suck at any jugulars or cut open any carotids to drain.
Okay,
today.
All right. Fair enough. Sorry, go ahead.
Families.
Continue with the story.
Well, no. So for now, it's okay. For energy, this past weekend, I went away. I didn't go away, but there was a 3-day music festival. Personally, I think a lot of us, however we're experiencing this COVID thing and all our personal lives, some of us like to be more social than others. I go through my phases. But I went out for 3 days and heard some music and, a lot of dark wave and post-punk type stuff and had a good time with what I would consider my judgmental second family. And the whole weekend was good. And I go back to work Monday into the real world of adulthood. And I had a good weekend. And the minute I get in front of some of these families, some of these people are so nasty, I literally just feel myself being drained. Just absolutely drained. And I think we tend to do that to each other in real life if you have to try to connect this. So much so that today, but I'm just very low energy because the way I just feel people come in and they just suck that life force out of you.
Yeah.
So, on that show, if you see the show is kind of funny because the particular energy vampire, he's a commentary on our modern life. Like, if he has to feed and he can't get to work, it's the weekend or something, he'll be in his basement with different accounts on like Instagram or Facebook, and he'll troll and argue with people. And he can actually feed that way by annoying the same people over and over again.
Okay. Interesting.
So,
you there? No, go ahead. Go ahead. Just I'm listening. So okay, the energy vampire thing, like we haven't really touched on that quite yet, but I was describing that as, is it, so do you think it's just like a communication style, or do you think that it is some sort of like magic going on, some kind of thing that can actually, people feed off of your energy and they become stronger as you become weaker? Do you think that's an actual thing that's, as the energy transfer possibly happens? So you came home drained, for instance. Do you think somebody else is like all pumped up because you felt drained?
No, I don't think the people that were doing it to me were doing it on purpose, but I will tell you this. Sometimes I go out to the club or something when I want to go dancing or even to hockey. And it took a long time, but sometimes you come and sometimes I'll go to work or I'll go out and I'll open my mouth and it'll just be negativity. And because I care for the person that I talk to, I catch myself and shut my mouth and just say their company is enough, and the music should be enough. I've gone to play hockey in a bad mood and I've hurt somebody, you don't realize you're doing those things. I think a lot of us walk through lives so narcissistic, that we don't realize we're even doing it. And if we're not, if we realize we are a narcissist and we're doing it on purpose, then yeah, we're feeding on somebody. Yesterday I went into work again. It was not a good day. Today I went in, I tried to bring donuts. I tried to be a little bit positive. And for the most part, the day wasn't bad, but it just took 2 hours in front of a family and it just sucked out the rest of my day. But I kept my mouth shut and I didn't make everybody miserable around me. So, I'm the most negative person, but I'm the funniest person, is what I'm always told. Like, when I'm with my friends, if the boat's sinking, I'll just be making jokes the whole time, So that's the way it is. I mean, I'll go to work and I'll be like, when is the piano going to fall on my head? And people get bummed out, but stuff just keeps happening. Energy, all of it's energy, whether it's focused in a person, focused in a vampire, you manifest these things. The other things, there are people that do take part in blood play, masquerade, taboo, there's vampire covens. There's one in Ybor City. I've never really been to their shtick, but that's a little much for me. But I know that some people do have some blood sport. What they get from it, I don't know.
Let's I'm okay not knowing. I'm okay with whatever else is going on. But so do you think at any time in history then that vampires themselves, like the actual mythology of them, like some sort of undead or a spirit or something, was actually walking the earth and maybe feeding off people, either like you described, maybe through like a direct energy transfer, or through like they've described in the regular mythology, like a bloodletting sort of thing?
Well, it's a good question. I always think of like Pontius Pilate, and I forget who else. There was somebody else that's supposed to be doomed to walk the earth, and you wonder. And then I think of, when people make fun of the royal family and some politicians, but then I think about some of those odd pictures of like Nicolas Cage that doesn't look like he's aged, and all these other pictures that show up in antiquity that look like famous actors, conspicuous, and just kind of, it's kind of a wild thought to wonder if some of these people that are in power, if they've maintained power throughout the shadows, and now for whatever reason they're in mass media and they're taking over. I think it's true. I really, honestly, though, I think it's symbolic. I think there's sacrifices. I think that there's groups of things we don't know about that engage in this. From Native Americans, Central Native American Indians, and blood sport and all of those things. The vampire itself I would think is a mythos. Again, it's a folklore, but we worship those things, and like a lot of other things, we worship that with symbolism.
Gotcha. So probably not directly, but there's some sort of symbolism that the elites may be doing something here, and maybe I think that's the weird part too, right? If there's some sort of like ritual belief in things like this, it's odd that that if it's not real, it's odd that the powers that be believe this stuff to be real, right? That's the oddness of this to me. That the stuff that kind of creeps me out a little bit.
Because maybe they can manifest it enough. I mean, we've all talked about that. Belief in manifesting.
Right,
exactly. If you believe a placebo is going to make you feel better, it might make you feel better. If you believe sucking somebody's blood is going to make you feel better, it might make you feel better. Especially if everybody's there chanting, chug, 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 over the keg, or over the blood bag.
Why, Joe? Why do we have to go there? Yeah, because why not? Because every day when I walk in the prep room, sometimes I look at bodies that look like they could be, Halloween props, split open, cut open, autopsied. Ooh, okay.
And their viscera sitting in a bag. You know what I mean? And when you see life like that, you say, we're just freaking meat bags. And I see it every day. That's just where my sense of humor goes. I'm sorry.
You. No, I got you. You're fine. I like your sense of humor, actually. Good stuff, my man. Anything else? Anything else about vampires while we got you on? Fantastic call as always.
No, if you have a chance, you can watch that show, What We Do in the Shadows. I think it's like on season 3 on FX. Just to give you some mindless laughing. If society's getting a little bit too much, if the news is getting a little bit too much, watch some pointless comedy and have a couple of laughs, and it's a reflection on society. So,
amen, brother. And let's not be afraid to laugh at ourselves, because that's part of it. That's part of the game here.
Hey, real quick, I'm gonna send you an article on it there too. My buddy that was on Stranger Things, he just spent the weekend or night in a haunted building in Tampa. I was trying to get a hold of him, so I don't know. I'll send you some information and whatever later on or tomorrow.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic.
Maybe you wanted him to call in or something like that. We could say.
Sure, absolutely. Please do. Looking forward to it. You're the best, Joe. Joe in Florida. Thanks for calling. God bless you and the family, my man.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, bro.
Have a good night.
Thanks, bro. You too. There you go. If you want to be part of the show, we're talking about vampires tonight, 702-957-1037. Copy that, Daryl. We're going to go to Jennifer real quick, and then we'll wind the show up with you. Let's go to Jennifer in Missouri. Welcome to the show, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is a great topic.
Thank you.
Gosh, Joe is so awesome. He's like one of the best callers ever.
Yeah. It is nice knowing somebody that works in that field, isn't it? Some insight. Definitely some insight.
Very. Yep.
So what do you think about vampires?
This whole topic is awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Oh, just all of the books and everything. There are so many different things in pop culture. My favorite movie was probably Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think River said that too. And I have to agree. But then as far as the books, I like all the movies and all the Hammer films and everything. And then as far as the books, I would say Anne Rice, Poppy Z. Bright, are really good, have great storylines for vampires. But then along the actual mythos of the vampire, it's amazing. But I think that there's several different types that, besides just the literal species, that there could literally be just naturally of its own accord, just like the parasites, that we all know about, certain insects and things like that. There could very well be a species that literally is just a vampire. But then you have like the classic idea of a vampire. But you have the humanized stories of the vampires, where you have the cases of, like with adrenochrome, for example, but not with adrenochrome necessarily, but the idea that you inject or take a certain hormone that's naturally in the blood or something that they're feeding off of, it does actually result in death. And then to keep going on and live forever, they have to keep consuming that same, what might affect the pituitary gland or the thyroid or who knows to continue living. You also have the idea of the strigoi and everything, which you covered that. And then I think there's a few other aspects. And, Joe was talking about the energy vampire thing. I think there's a couple of different degrees with that. You have the thought form vampire, which is like it's a mental thing. I think that if you sit around and you think about something obsessively in a way, it could result in, this is just my opinion. I mean, this is just stuff I was thinking about. But I think that if you had like something you obsessively thought about mentally, it would create something called a thought form vampire. If you should, like a project or something much bigger than that, if you thought on it consistently, it may need to eventually take on a sort of a Tautos effect, where it has to be fed, it takes up a mind of its own, and it continues to seek to be revitalized, and therefore it may drain you mentally, energetically that way. There's also something called a fetch, and this goes into magic. And a lot of people I've talked to that are really into witchcraft actually were unfamiliar with this, but it was something that I learned about when I was looking into witchcraft a while back. And the gist of it is that you create a fetch because you need to basically create a golem for yourself, essentially, but not necessarily a golem. They don't call it that. And you put out the wish in a ritual that you want something to help you with this. Then you start to find you're so supposedly being watched by the Grigori, which are these watchers in a lot of the old books on it. The watchers begin to see, these are the angels of the four corners and ancient beings, supposedly. They begin to leave things in your path. It may be the skeleton of a bird, or it might be the skin of a snake, things like that. And you take those items and you make a hole in the ground. You put those things in the hole and you keep adding to it until eventually you're putting in this hole in the ground. Next to this hole, or in the same hole in the ground, you throw in food, meat, things like that. This thing takes on a life force and becomes a literal being of sorts. You continue to feed it, it gets stronger, it does what you're wanting it to do. And if you should stop feeding it, or if the bringer, basically the person who brought this thing, should pass away or anything like that, the being, the fetch, will have to go and seek out life force from other things, people, typically, or animals, anything. And it becomes so strong that it has the ability to use telekinetic power to move things. There have been cases of it open up doors and open people's houses, literally feeding on people. And then if you go into the Order of the Nine Angels, which is a kind of a dark underground thing involving, that I won't go into too much because they've been involved in a lot of illegal activity, but just to mention them, they actually have put out many PDFs and different books about how a person could become a vampire, not with blood, but they actually do the practice much like people who practice yoga, to be able to use people as prey, essentially, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, to their advantage. They become a predatorial being. They look at other people as being weak because they're kind and not as selfish as they should be. And it's a predator-prey scenario going on in the world. There are CEOs and, people in powerful positions who have studied this type of psychology. It's said and that they were part of the Order of the Nine. So I don't know. Not of the Order of the Nine. A lot of people talk about on the internet, but this is the Order of the Nine Angels, which is like this. It's I'm not going to even go into it.
Fair enough.
But if you think about these old ancient beings, going back into the most ancient times, it's very likely that it could have either been a literal being or something that people created and fed for hundreds, maybe thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It could still be feeding, and being fed. So there's that concept as well. And eventually that would take up the ability to, it could go into a body and possess somebody very easily. So I think that that's kind of that's just my take on it. With as far as the idea of vampires, and I think that they are very real, and that's just my opinion about it and what I think.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I appreciate that. So Jennifer has a YouTube channel. You want to tell everybody about your channel? I've already linked it in the chat for everybody. I think that people have been asking for quite a bit. We want more from Jennifer. So we've got an outlet now, don't we?
No, that's too nice. That's too nice. No, I decided to just start making little clip videos. It's nothing big.
All right.
It's a little channel.
Then I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you.
Talking about stuff I was thinking about.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Just things I'm thinking about and trying to, I guess kind of just, kind of going with that, just thinking, especially just thoughts and stuff like that I'm thinking on. And it's not much. I have screencasts, just 5-minute clips and stuff. But I appreciate it, Mike. So nice.
Yeah.
I hope people, would look into it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah,
I'll link it again.
I created a Twitter too. Did the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so the links, if you want to follow Jennifer, please do. The links are down below, both on Rockfin and YouTube already. Just scroll down, you'll see it with the links. It's next to Tinfoil Timothy's link down there. But yeah, thank you so much for all the great calls. Like I said, people are asking constantly, so I appreciate you putting up a channel. And and I'm not going to just be all benevolent about this. I'm gonna steal some ideas from her channel too. So it's all good. I appreciate. So if you have any ideas, like I said, let me know, and we'll get you on the show if you want to be on the show at some point as well. So thank you so much for all the great calls. Everybody give Jennifer a follow on her YouTube, and thanks again for the fantastic stuff.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
Pleasure's ours. Have a great evening. There you go. All right. So tonight, again, vampires, right? And I think that's a great take on, maybe vampire is maybe not necessarily a blood thing, but more of an energy thing, more of something that we create for ourselves. It's maybe a fascination, maybe this thought form, this tulpa, this sort of thing that maybe comes from ancient times and is passed on through ideas, passed on through, I guess you would call it magic in a sense. And great ideas from Jennifer as always. And one more time, if you want to follow her, please follow her channel. I've got that link already right there on Rockfin and also on YouTube. So just scroll down and click follow. You'll find Jennifer there. Great stuff as always. So all right, so this is the deal. As we wind this down, I appreciate everybody, all the great thoughts in the chat, everybody's enthusiasm for the show. We're going to go to Daryl here in just a minute as we wind this show down because we have a third hour coming up of Troubled Minds. But for right now on the Fringe FM, if you're listening on the Fringe, we are done. Stay tuned for Joe Roop, Lighting the Void, and after that, you're going to get Ryan Gable with The Secret Teachings. If you're listening to us on any other platform, if you're listening on YouTube, DLive, Rockfin, or Twitter, or the podcast feed, stay tuned for a third hour of Troubled Minds. We got more vampires coming up, more calls, more of your thoughts, and Daryl is first. So there it is. As we finish this up, I appreciate all the great ideas tonight. Thanks for being part of this and part of the conversation, and thanks for being enthusiastic about it. Like I said, like I always say, be sure, be strong, be true. Thank you for listening. From our Troubled Minds to yours, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific. So we got Daryl on the line. We're going to go to Daryl in just a minute, but we're going to take a quick break as we kind of reset everything here. We're still talking about vampires. What does it mean? Are they real? What do you think about mythology? What do you think about pop culture? What do you think about the vampire in general? As described by Jennifer there and others tonight, a vampire may not be as literal as it seems, but it also may be very real. So what are your thoughts? We're going to keep on taking your phone calls if you want to be part of the show. 702 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. TroubledMinds.org. Click the Discord link, and we're going to go to Daryl in just one moment. Hang tight, Daryl. We'll be right with you. Thanks for being patient, and 2-minute break. Be right back. 2 minutes, more Troubled Minds on the way. Don't go anywhere. As we talk about, that's right, vampires. Yep. Vampires. What does it mean? What do they mean? Again, the old trope is Vlad Dracula, right? Vlad Tepes from Europe. That whole vampire mythology. That's the vampires we know most, but are there different forms of vampires? Energy vampires, not just mental energy, but maybe physical energy. You tell me. That's kind of the ideas we're talking about and kicking around tonight. If you want to be part of the show, 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Let's go to our good friend Daryl in New York. Daryl, welcome to the show. Thank you for being patient. How are you tonight? Testing 1 2. Can you hear me?
Told that the sun god Ra sent his daughter Sekhmet down to.
All right, I'm going to mute that. I can't hear myself back like that. It'll drive me crazy. All right, so I muted you just a sec. Please mute the stream, and we'll get you back on. Looking to hear from you guys tonight, 702-957-1037. TroubledMinds.org. Click the Discord link and come meet lots of nice people in there. Daryl, you back? You muted up?
Cool. Got me.
Hello. Welcome to the show, Daryl. How are you?
Great. Oh, thank you for having me. Great topic.
Pleasure's ours. Thank you. It's kind of basic, but I think that, as you know from us, we can kind of take this anywhere. I like the idea that we got into with Joe and Jennifer at the end there with maybe some energy vampires. What do you think about this whole thing?
I want to say, no matter what my day is, whatever I've been experiencing all day, as soon as I turn the show on and start listening to your guests call in and you, suddenly everything comes together, no matter how off or wacky or imaginative, whatever you're discussing, somehow comes back into reality for me. And it kind of makes sense by the end of the day, or maybe it doesn't make sense. But it's funny how, like today, just for example, I'm going to bring it up because something I saw today was very interesting about the airline pilots that were going on strike, and somebody came on to Fox News and really blew a whistle. Of course, it got taken down. So, but she said some amazing things, and basically they were getting sick and they were trying to strike to prove a point because you know what's going on. I'm not going to mention that, but in the meantime, it got me to thinking about okay, for example, I'm just like drinking all the same cocktails that Joe's drinking, Jennifer's drinking, that maybe juice, you know?
The maybe
and
juice.
Mixing them all up, the maybe juice, and just mixing them all up and coming out with something that I was thinking about. So today's vampires, maybe they're really working on this stuff to kind of prolong life, reduce the population, make people more efficient, artificial intelligence, vampires. It kind of all makes sense. And I'm thinking, the super vampire, they're working with bats. So vampires are not far off from a bat, vampire bats, drinking blood. Maybe there's, some aspects of this blood drinking, but the key is to, the goal is immortality. And the elites are probably going to do this. But of course, there's some problems because, with the blood and all this blood, you're going to get some secondary characteristics that are undesirable. The adverse effects that they're trying to keep hush hush. Like, maybe you can live forever, but the men are going to get breasts, or the women are going to start to grow like facial hair, and it's like they're going to have to shave every day, et cetera, et cetera. The certain things are going to be very undesirable. Of course, you're going to live forever, but you're going to have like all kinds of diseases because you've been using blood from all these different people to feed your project, to stay alive forever. So you're going to have chronic conditions, even though the blood's going to keep you alive. You've got all these, side effects, and I'll tell you about this. And the various thing is like, being ignored, take this, take more blood, you're going to be this. And then you have the AI. So, of course, this is going to, dwindle down the population so that you don't have soldiers that you need. You don't need anybody working for the airlines. You don't need healthcare workers. Everybody's going to be robotized or vampirized. You're going to have these long endurance, things that just need a little bit of blood, to do the job of 10 people. You're going to be replaced by this kind of AI vampire with breasts and facial hair, perhaps, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I like it. I get what you're saying here, meaning that if this continues to happen the way it's going to happen with the transhumanism thing, and then more and more power is derived not from the good old fashioned blood and sweat and tears. It's from like the solar energy and power and power stations and AC and DC power, right? That type of thing. I get what you're saying. So we're taking humanity and we're turning it into a different form of vampire in the same result though, or the same pursuit rather, that we're going after immortality, right? Like I like it. And we did a recent show on this with who was it? It was what's his name? Bezos again, with his immortality lab, right?
Right.
He was kind of trying to set this up and do this, yeah. So and they're funding these scientists. Their funding is unlimited, and they get to do it in like this deep dark basement without any sort of oversight, as far as we're aware. So, yeah, I like where you're going with this.
No limits to it. You don't. Then the depopulation thing has to go along with it because you need more money to fund it, and you don't want to pay off all these people that are growing old and need Social Security. You want to tap into that nice resource. So you definitely want to keep that kind of false narrative going with the media. They've got everything going to make this successful. It's just concocting the next fabulous virus that you're going to talk everybody into taking. And the only people that are possibly going to be the winners are going to have to go underground, like us. Maybe we're going to have to find a good scientist, and take the antidote. But they have an antidote somewhere, so we have to locate that antidote so we don't turn into some kind of AI, transhuman monster, I don't know how much they're going to, work on this population, but they're certainly going to be immortal by then. I think they're working so fast and so furious. I don't know how quickly this can happen, but the thing is, you have to do this. I always thought about this. If we were going to be taken over by anybody, including an alien army or any kind of, massive takeover, it has to be done almost instantaneously. Whatever they're using now is something that they could possibly use a satellite turn on. That's why they want everybody involved. They could just do a turn on and make one little switch of a satellite drone and make everybody behave or die or do it at the same exact time. So there's no revolution. They don't want to deal with anybody, fighting back. except they're little super, they're super little soldiers. But they're going to probably have to, probably working on now, because everybody's going to be so ill from, what they're taking now in therapies, that they're going to have to resort, or this was the plan, is to replace everybody with mechanics and robots. And the way that the pace they're going, their little vampire robots are probably going to be on, in production very soon, maybe next year, who knows, before 2030, I mean. You'll see an in place, a medical replacement for your doctor and your flight attendant,
Yeah. Honestly, I think I'd rather have a robot doctor than like these doctors that are just ineffective drug dealers. You know what I mean? At least the robot's got an algorithm set to like maybe figure something out, right? Not some bias where they're going to just try and feed you some opioids and send you home. Anyway, I'm just saying.
It's so right. Oh yes, definitely.
That's just me being cynical. All right, so I'm with you though. So it is weird how when we talk about paranormal stuff, it kind of comes back to technology again, doesn't it? It kind of comes back to these sort of looking at things in a technological way. And so in a sense, what we're talking about is a technological vampire. We're talking about not just kind of demeaning the human thought form anymore. We're talking about maybe the energy vampire is such that it's in a technological thing, very much like Neuralink. It's trying to turn us into like Borg hybrid soldiers, and through a means of basically just sapping our ideas and regurgitating things that are back like I don't know, what would you say, like hive mind stuff, right? It's like you're trading old school novel ideas and even new ideas for nothing, for the hive mind, for the political powers that be, for like a 1984 future. I like the idea, Daryl. I like the idea. You're onto something here, and it is strange how everything kind of circles back to the similar themes anyway, right?
Exactly. And like Jennifer was saying, like, you get like this OCD kind of hunger, like that thing she's feeding and she keeps on feeding it until the owner dies, and then it has to take over. Like, it's going to have like all of the qualities of the people that they suck their blood off of, So, how do you weed out the negative from the positive? That's going to be the trick, They're going to take on the characteristics of all the blood that they suck from all of the victims or the donors. Today's victim is tomorrow's donor. I don't know. Perhaps,
Oh boy. You're making me consider the donor card. All right, let me reconsider the donor card. All right, so what are your thoughts on like traditional vampires? Do you think they're actually real, or do you think it's more of just fancy tales from the past?
Everything in our history seems to come true eventually. We seem to kind of prove everything ultimately. I wanted to ask anyone, did they remember a vampire movie just off, on the same subject, where everybody, like the vampires were super duper ugly in their caskets, like they were old and decrepit and, looked their age, until they until they got out at night and they'd become like really sexy and pretty and beautiful and handsome. Do they remember anything like that they would transform? They were like, transform into these gorgeous, sexy, vampires at night, so that they could go out and seduce everybody. But if you saw them in their caskets, like, they were super repulsive. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Just wondering. I remember that movie when I was little. No? Any ideas? Anyone?
Not to me.
Mention it.
Hopefully somebody in the chat will recognize that, but I don't know. That doesn't ring a bell. But it sounds like a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. But there's something so sexy and romantic about the vampire. I've always been like attracted to vampires. Like, they all usually had long hair, like the rock stars of the 70s and 60s. They were like rock stars to me. Like look at Val Kilmer, and wasn't he in one of those People Are Strange? Oh, he was. I'm getting two movies.
Jim Morrison.
I think.
Jim Morrison. Yeah.
Jim Morrison and
the Doors. Yeah.
Lost Boys. Wasn't he in the Lost Boys too? No.
I'm not sure. I'm the wrong guy to ask those questions to. I don't watch any movies.
But they were all like, just, there was something very sexy. There was always some kind of sexual. Well, they have to be seductive to get their victims. So, of course, I always found them very attractive and irresistible. So you got to don't know. There's some kind of like thing like everyone wants to be one, but they don't want those other nasty side effects that go along with it, like having to, like the dilemma of having to kill somebody to feed, or having to eat a rat, like Brad Pitt. Hanging out with Brad Pitt, wouldn't be a bad thing either,
Yeah, that wouldn't be so bad. I forgot. Yeah, Brad Pitt was Louis, right? Lewis. He was Lewis in Interview with the Vampire. That's right. That's right. That tells you what I think about the movies. Don't watch the movies, guys. Read the books, please. Read the books. They're so. It's better by like 100-fold. It's not even close. It's not even like the same thing, really. But yeah, that's right. Brad Pitt was in there with Tom Cruise even. Oh, jeez.
Turn them down,
Yeah, right.
It's better than Brad Pitt.
Yeah, the weird thing too about Anne Rice, again, like I said, I know a lot about it. I've read probably half of that whole vampire. Like there's a ton of them, but the weird thing about that with vampires in the Anne Rice mythology is that they said they didn't even have to like seek victims. The victims were seeking them. It's like people that were kind of finished with life. They could just stand outside of a house party, and the somebody inside would walk out and just know they were there and like kind of volunteer themselves, So it's kind of interesting that take there. That like at some point they said they weren't even. You didn't even have to be a predator anymore. It was just a situation where you would just kind of show up and wait, and somebody would come to you, kind of get in the arms of the vampire. But yeah, fantastic stuff. So maybe you're going to say drink the maybe juice and say maybe vampires are real.
Totally. One more thing about the vampires and artificial intelligence and Morgellons. Of course, it comes back to Morgellons sometimes. There's something about the vampires. They're always strong. Like they have this incredible strength that's like totally, you can't even tell that they're as strong as they are. They can lift, 10 times their weight, you know what I mean? They throw something across a room that's like so enormous, they're just incredibly strong. And Morgellons, which is considered artificial intelligence, or maybe it's part of the that black goo stuff, is also very strong and durable. I mean, I'll tell you, like, the durability of a Morgellons fiber is like 10 times stronger than a hair, a human hair, and it's like 10 times the size width of a human hair. See how visible that is. It wraps around your human hair, so can you imagine how strong it is? There's something about strength that all comes back to this artificial intelligence and maybe, longevity and immortality that's kind of tied together. And the vampires, because they're gorgeous, they're strong, they're immortal. I mean, what's bad about that? I don't know.
They're also depressed. They're also the original emo. If you're to believe Anne Rice's version of the vampires, they're totally depressed.
Oh, sure. It's very hard to meet people and get relationships. There's a lot of trade-offs, like I said. And they also have a lot of conditions and diseases now. There's more modern diseases than ever. They don't even want to, draw blood from just about anybody. They probably have to fill out a pretty long list of, have you ever slept with this? Have you been in this country? Like, my God, I think the list is strong for going on a plane these days. Try to mate a vampire,
Yeah, totally.
Discretion, a lot of discretion there,
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, just saying.
No, you're good. You're good. Fantastic stuff as always, Daryl. We got Kelly here and Ash is in the color queue. So any other thoughts on here? You're welcome to stay right here in the channel like you always do. Any other thoughts on this? Anything else?
Oh, I'm good. Can't wait to hear Kelly.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's do it. Thank you, Daryl in New York. I appreciate that. Always great stuff from you. And let's go to Kelly. Kelly in Colorado. Whenever you're ready, my friend. And we got Ash. Ash, if you're out there listening, whenever, man, just jump in. I know you got mod status. You can jump in whenever. What's up, Kelly? Welcome to the show. How are you, dude?
Hey, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hanging out, man. I'm having a good time. Having a good time talking to my friends about weird shit. It's hard to complain, right?
All right. Sounds pretty good tonight.
Yeah, I think so. What are your thoughts on vampires? Is it one of those situations where you think it's just fanciful tales, or do you think there's something more to this?
No, it's just like how you were reading too. Again, I go back to it is in Sumeria. It's Babylonian and Mesopotamian. Some of those ancient stories like that. Because it is even a lot of some people would like to go with like what's his name, Vlad the Impaler. But that was just an added story where, the story of like Dracula came from. But Yeah, that whole story is a lot different too. It's not really so much as the vampire part where, having to deal with blood. I mean, it was, yes, a lot of blood from spiking some people, but I don't think it had to do with anything drinking the blood or anything like that.
Yeah, and again, that's the weird part about all this. There's a whole lot to this, in not just, again, right, like maybe thought form vampire, like Jennifer was saying, energy vampire, like I was describing previously. I think even if you just throw out the blood and that whole bit, the adrenochrome and all that stuff, which I didn't want to take it there tonight, just a little bit dark, But if you throw all that stuff out, you still have some of these other ideas where it's like these energy exchanges. Like I'm sure you've been around people that just drain you for some reason. Just being in their presence, you don't even have to necessarily be talking to them, but they kind of drain you. Like your patience, they drain your energy, they drain. You know what I mean? I'm sure you know people like this.
Of course, yeah. It's kind of like that popped in my mind too when Joe brought that up about energy, draining your energy and stuff like that. That's why a lot of I wear some other different type stuff that helps. It says it helps fight that negativity. But yeah, energy drainers, man. Those are the ones people that you go to work and they're always bitching about something, or they have an answer for everything. Those ones are the ones that are like, man, they're just draining to listen to, But yeah, I understand that one, man. That one's that's actually more of a vampire type thing than I would say with blood. I mean, again, with these ancient ones, like the one from Babylonian Liltu, she had like the head of a lion and the body of a donkey or whatever, but she drank blood too. Some of these old ones, like if you go back to the older stories, they're not really having to do with, it was more, they were eating like if people walking upon somebody that looked like they were eating off a body or draining their blood or something, and that could be, back then you could probably just say that, it was some kind of a bloodsucker. That's what they were calling. It wasn't really a vampire. It was bloodsuckers. It's kind of like I don't know, man. Like there's no way to get around from it to take it down that dark path, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're correct. It's like Asher's just sending me a message right now. He's like, "We're not going to talk about the A word." I'm like, let's not do that too deep. I don't want to get banned, right? But I think when you talk about drinking blood, I mean, I think think about it this way. Let's call this a historical conspiracy that maybe they invented the vampire to normalize what the elites do. let's go with that. Yeah, right. Something like that.
Yeah, because that's where I was going to take it too, but with the chrome and everything, because if you look about it, right, even like I take it to a different point where, again, I just tried. It goes back to, for me, is like the reptilian type, because if they were a shape shifting being, if they were, the ones that talks about, because it's kind of like the one I was talking about in Discord, that even these statues and drawings and cave paintings and everything, they show type of a reptilian, and even like South America, they were, what was it? It was like just tons of blood sacrifices, that's what they were doing. And, their gods were the flying lizard people or lizard god or whatever, So, and if you talk about like even with like if you go with the whole vampire type thing, in Hollywood they show as these things, they're attacking people, and when they're attacking them, they're scaring them, right? So again, that their heart pumping like that gets whatever that's in the blood is what I think they need. It's not really the blood itself. Because even the story goes of they're trying to normalize it now, saying science is trying to say normal it now that hey that we find out that the younger blood doing blood transfusion with older people it revitalizes them but before they were doing all that shit in secret and they were scaring these young kids because it's the younger kids that that they're after, because, it's all the younger blood. And it's just like I said, like that, the Lutu is the one in Sumerian or Babylonian. That one was, they would snatch up the baby as soon as it came out the womb and then suck all the blood out, So that was like some real extreme cases of that. But again, that's some of the stuff that you would, you would come across in some of these ancient stories, and then, it'd just turn around. So again, if they were shape-shifting and they already look like a human, and they're over there bent over, sucking the blood out of somebody, yeah, you would probably get some stories like that passed down. That's where I kind of like take it, in that area, because again, you have people missing by the thousands every year, and it's worldwide. We're just talking. Well, for that one, they would be just talking in the United States alone. But if you're talking worldwide, with all this human trafficking, people missing, there's something else happening. I believe that's and more devious. That needs to come to light. Even though people don't want to talk about it, and it's kind of that everybody thinks that it's some kind of conspiracy theory or whatnot, but no, that shit's been happening for millennia.
Yeah. The kids on the milk cartons, guys, aren't selling milk. They're on there for a reason, and it's been going on for a very, very, very long time. And I think that's the thing. It's not new. Who was saying this earlier? Nothing new under the sun, right? It's sort of that situation where we end up, chasing our tail with, child trafficking and all the rest of this stuff. It's horrific. It's not good. It's not okay. And, I think that's part of the problem too, when you start talking about vampirism and the paranormal stuff, that subject kind of comes up, because it's not just, go back to, missing 411 with, David Paulides and people missing in the parks. Like, he's focused on just the national parks, but I mean, it's that's not the only place. It's happening all over the damn place, and yeah, unfortunate. So what about what about the historical vampire? Are you sold on that? You think maybe in some capacity it survived and exists today, and it is a supernatural thing, or do you think again it's kind of like I was joking about, it's some sort of cover from the elites to the conspiracy to cover up what's really going on with the other stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's where kind of I was talking about is, it's kind of two of the same, but I don't call them elites, but these people are some sick people, and if they are not of human race, put in a different perspective, if they're not of the human race and they need the blood or what's in the blood, because when they're doing that other thing, they spin it out of the blood. They really don't need everything that's in the blood. They just spin it out. Because if you drink blood, human blood, another person was to drink some more, or like another person's blood, a certain amount, you would get sick anyway. So it's not the blood itself, it's what's in the blood that they need. And so the filtration of that is what is probably what's been going on for a while. So yeah, but that's the dark part of it. But as for my favorite thing for movies or whatnot would have been that Bram Stoker's Dracula, the old one. That was a good one. Yeah, that one was a good one. And then you also have the Daywalker, Blade.
Oh yeah, the Daywalker. Yeah. Blade was pretty good. It was so much glitz and kung fu, and it was like vampires for the modern day. I agree. That was kind of nice. And then they took it one level further with Kate Beckinsale and Underworld and the Lycans and all that. I thought that was a pretty awesome series too.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Because they had like the Hounds of Hell, which was their protectors. And I guess, they took it a little bit further where they were more looked like of a werewolf type instead of like a big giant dog or something, like a hound. So yeah, that was pretty interesting how they kind of did that, and then they had, the conflict, the story. I mean, it kind of drug it a little bit too long, but, the first couple movies were actually pretty good because, it was something different, something new, and it wasn't always the same, which was pretty good.
Yeah, man, you got to keep making movies till they stop making money. Come on, man. you know the rules here. You know the rules. They got to make them till we're sick of them.
All they do is just change the names and the characters, and it's the same story, though. You know what I mean? Most of them now, it's just it's pretty sickening. Like the cartoon ones, like somebody shot with this one guy did a video, and I just sat and watched it for a second, and he was talking about all the cartoons. He says they're all the same, all the character, all the storyline. They just changed the character or whatever, and it's true. He went through every all the stories in every one. Like there's a bad guy, and then he overcomes it, and it was just pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, man, and we're they think they're experts at telling us the same story over and over again, but we notice, we notice. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So what else? We got Ash here too. Like I said, you're welcome to stay as long as you like. So I'm not going to try and run you off here. But whenever you're ready, let's get Ash in here as well, and let's chop it up. Other thoughts on?
Bring that reptile in here.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just said, bring that reptile in here.
Get him in, Ash, the reptilian from Mars. Get your slithery ass in here. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
What's up? Hey, Kelly, you telling them all my secrets, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, you can't be doing that shit here. This is Earth.
Bro, I've been doing that we've been doing that for thousands of years, man. You trying to can't just stop, God, Kelly. No, it's funny, Kelly. It's you're one of the first callers and one of the best, man. I was literally in chat. I'm like, dang it, he's talking about that. I was going to talk about that, and then this, and then that, and I was like, dang, he even named my favorite vampire movies. It's like, well, I don't even know if I want to call anymore, But no, it's an interesting conversation. It's like, what's always interesting, and Kelly, I think you can agree with this. There's always these legends, these stories, and usually, like, these things have some sort of hint of truth. They come from something, right? There's some sort of origin, and they're like rumors and whispers, and you can kind of track them down. And a lot of times, we know where they came from. We can figure it out, right? But other times we can't, and it's fascinating. And a lot of the rumors and things that have happened throughout history kind of lead back to, if we knew more about aliens, if we knew what aliens were out there and what aliens come here, I think it would like fill in the gap, right, for a lot of us. So, if we come to find out reptilians are a real thing, and I know that for some people that's wild, that's crazy, but you don't know what's true and what isn't. Then at some point you got to go back and be like, blood-sucking vampires, werewolves, all these kind of things. Was there some truth to it? And is this, with this new variable, does it kind of fill in the gaps? I mean, you even mentioned where if reptilians have been here or any alien species, and they created hybrids or humans to kind of these like hybrid humans to kind of run the show here, they would have the same sort of tendencies that they do, right? So if they're like bloodsuckers, then so would their hybrid, their people. And that would explain, like, Queen Elizabeth just looking, kids. I don't know if you saw their video, but they had all these people around Queen Elizabeth, and she's supposed to she's meeting this family, and this little kid's like made eye contact with her and squirmed away and like ran off. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen it. It doesn't surprise me. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah.
No, I'd never seen that either. So
yeah, it's pretty hilarious. So yeah, I guess, where do these kind of like these rumors and these ancient folklore, and does it actually come from something? And I didn't want to mention the chrome either. You kind of covered it, but what else would it be? You know what I mean? Like what else would blood sucking vampires kind of come from? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
If you know, I was just gonna say, because it's not only that too, because like in history, where I can't remember who else brought it up tonight, where they would, people would, the queen, she would bathe in young girls' blood, because it said, revitalize you. It's the exact same thing, there's something that's in the blood per se, but it's not, they don't need it all, there's just something in it. And so obviously, and all the stuff that we were listening to, or, that has been uncovered, it's a gimme, you know what I mean? It's for me, because again, I like I said, if you look at these ancient stories, they're telling you, you know what I mean? And so for me, they can't, nowadays they can hide stuff with a lot of stuff, but now that's why I like the ancient stuff, because if you can go into these museums around the world, even these small ones that are like off the beaten path, they got some stuff that's mind blowing. Because you have again, I kind of talked about this earlier on Discord, kind of about this, where going into that direction with the reptilians is that with Toth's book and everything. I kind of posted that one on tablet 8, the keys of mystery, when he talks about these things were shadows, they're from a different dimension, and the only way they could be here, like I saying, is that you have to give up the ultimate, which is you hear people, I sold myself to the devil, and because back then too, it was more they were connecting it to saying that these vampires are the devil or whatnot, or even like the lizard people, or it was looks like the devil or something. If
Right.
you haven't something like that, you ran across something, that's what probably you would think, especially back then in those times, I would say.
Right. Well,
But
even like if reptilians have shape-shifting technology, supposedly that's like their thing, right? So if they disguise themselves as a human, and then suddenly they act out a little bit, and they have like fangs and they bite a person or something, that's vampires right there. And like you mentioned with shadows and whatever, and they used to say vampires were invisible and could do this and that. That could be that interdimensionality that you're talking about. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, because the so-called vampire, he could hide in the shadows and move along, and like with a puff of smoke or whatnot. It's all that stuff that they're kind of actually telling you. They're telling you. I think Hollywood, because these people, that's a lot of money you're dealing with, right? So it's something like, if this was an underground thing, like this is all, reptilians, I believe they're real, but just per se, people believe whatever. But, if they're the ones, they're actually telling you in these stories, even in Hollywood, even about space too, because some of the shit that they have on there is like, how the hell would you know? And I know some of these cameras too that are like, I know they're great, and, these telescopes that we have, but man, some of this information they're pulling off is like, we've been sitting around, floating around this planet, doing some scans on this shit like Star Trek, it's fucking weird. But anyway, to the point was, the information that they're giving to you, it's like they're telling you, like E.T. or the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all that shit, and now even the one, I can't remember what movie it is, where it looks like they look like reptilians jumping around or took over the planet. It's kind of I think it was a game at one time. But yeah, it's like some of that shit, even Star Wars itself, when they talk about, I don't know, the Force, to me that's all real. To me it is, because from all the stuff that you read, and like even in biblical shit, they're trying to tell you how powerful you are, but people just, I don't know, they just trying to keep everybody dumbed down. And it's something that's and shows like this, people get together and we all, it's not just one thing, this was good about this one. We talk about everything, it's not just, all directed in one direction, aliens, or, this is, I like the point that we can expand this horizon and, and talk about everything with on this planet and off planet,
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, man. It's like, if we just limit ourselves we artificially limit what we can and can't talk about, then we pretty much put ourselves in a box and throw away the key, and that's it. And then you can never go outside of that. And if you look at all the great people of history, innovators, scholars, scientists, they all just kind of went off in left field and figured some shit out, right? And yeah, you know what? I have a theory about Hollywood, and I won't tangent on that long because we're talking about vampires. But I have a theory that the different extraterrestrial beings that kind of run this stuff, they need our permission. That's part of the thing. Like they need our like humans need to agree to it. Otherwise, other beings can move in and make agreements with humans. So I think maybe Hollywood's a way of them kind of artificially getting our agreements by showing us what they do and don't. And then you mentioned Dracula and all them worship Satan, right? They worship the devil. And I don't know if you saw a reptilian and its helpers or its handlers, that'd pretty much be the devil to you, right? And and there's all these rumors that Hollywood, they're into satanic stuff and whatever. I don't know. Again, we're talking about vampires, but the root of all evil is reptilians, man. Like if reptilians are real, this real stuff is real, other reptilians other than me, then you plug it in, it makes everything makes sense. But it's such a crazy thing to plug in, and there's no evidence for it. You can't support it, so it's a tough one. But it definitely it just fills in the blank so nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it does too once you delve into some of that stuff. And I don't know, man. And see, I don't like to try to we're seen to be like strong arming people or trying to believe what or see what I just give them the information. You know what I mean? And they can if there's I wouldn't say they're if they look upon it with open eyes and mind, and I'm pretty sure they'll catch on because, that veil is going to be lifting here pretty soon. And, you know what I mean? I think, anyway, that's what it seems like is going, and they're fighting like hell to keep it covered. And that's why we're having so much of this, like, torment going on right now. It's almost like a distraction. But there's a movement in one direction of finding out, I think, disclosure. And it's going to happen pretty soon. I mean, I'm not saying like, within the year or something, but, even within the next couple of years, for me, that's where it's going to happen. And that's where you can learn about, like, for me, like all the ancient teachings, that shit right there is truth, because it's just more realistic than what the hell that, that's put forth to us now. Because, and it's weird because what even more mind-blowing is it's the same shit on different parts of the planet. Different cultures, different, like, you know what I mean? That's the point that, the whole ancient astronaut theory for me is like, man, like, it's either, I mean, bro, come on. It's like, I mean, I have some, some issues with some of the stuff that they have. Don't get me wrong, it's not like a true believer on everything they say, but, I mean, you gotta, like we do here, drink the maybe juice and go on down that road. But at the same time, man, the whole reptilian thing, because, like, I don't know if you ever heard of that, he's an African shaman. I posted him on Discord too, and he's got, what he does is like, it's like a family thing, it's like passed down through their generations of, through their family lineage. And they, they all become like, what, people would call a witch doctor, or like, Western America or Western the world would call it a witch doctor, but he's something else, But he had the knowledge he was passing down, and, he's also talked from that British guy. Can't remember his name right now, but he talks about reptilians. But he's the one that introduces
David Icke.
Yeah, David Icke is the one that introduces him. And this man's passed away now, but man, the story he's telling, and the video I posted is three hours long, and it's only part one. And this guy, one of the stories is that there was a twin brothers that were lizard brothers, and that they brought the moon here to the planet Earth. there was time before, the moon, and he said that they brought the moon here. It's a crazy fucking story, man. You got to listen.
I heard about this one.
Huh?
They drug the moon here, and then they put it in its, because the moon is an anomaly. The moon behaves in a way that no other satellite we know of does. It's like the perfect distance from Earth, and it's always staying. It always keeps its dark side to us. It's almost as if it was set there. That's and again, it's the only satellite that we know of, and we know of, I don't know, thousands, hundreds of thousands, and none of the other ones that we know of behave like that. Almost as it's set here. And then you listen to these ancient stories, and it's like, two reptilians came here and, probably did what they set this planet up for themselves. And, remote viewers talk about this old empire, this old reptilian empire. And I will say that all the remote viewing organizations, like the ones that work for the government, the ones that are academic, whenever they go out into space or they go a little too far, they always run into reptilians. All remote viewing eventually runs into reptilian. And that's I don't know, that's either everyone goes crazy kind of consistently, or there's something there. And and if you listen and you read and these ancient texts, Enki, I don't want to get into it too much because you'll just put me to shame. But wasn't Enki, who was part of basically a conglomerate of different extraterrestrial beings? Enki was the one that created human, or at least modified us, and he was a reptilian himself. And so, it's almost as if the narrative is reptilians came here, they kind of found us, they messed around, they've claimed dominance over the planet, and then they kind of run this in secret. And sometimes, a lot of allure comes from that, whether they're vampires or demons or what. I don't know. If I saw a reptilian in my room, I'd scream demon immediately.
Yeah. No, the story of the Anunnaki. This is okay. This is the thing about it. To me, the Sumerians or the Anunnaki they're not the reptilian. I believe for me it's the Gigi, the other half, because Enki he's a creator. He has created different. He's a scientist, right? So he's created machines. He's created their spaceships, right? And obviously he was tinkering around with genetics. So if you see all these weird shit throughout the Egyptian pantheon and Sumerian over in India or Iran, right? And in that religion too, they're all half not demons. They look like demons. They're half animal bodies, right? And in India, they got 5 different animal bodies. They got claws of a bird, and then they got these weird legs, and then strength of a bear, wings of an eagle, and they got 5 different.
Don't forget the 6 arms.
And they got 5, 6 faces and shit. So it's weird, and everybody would say that's it's all make believe shit, But how the hell do we know? Just because we haven't found the bones of these things, maybe there were, like I said, we had talked about this before, but maybe there was just one of them, or they had long lives, or you couldn't kill them, because even in the Sumerian text, they were talking about bringing people back to life. That's the whole reason why, in Egypt and stuff, they instead of burying their people, they would. That's the whole reason why they would mummify them, because they can come back and bring it back to life by using this. It's a weird the way they explain it. It's they had a transmitter, and the sister in Nineveh, she ran it over this person's head, and the one that was that died on Mars, the one that was guarding the king. But yeah, so they brought him back to life. They gave him what they call the life of, or the life of water and the life of bread, or life of food, right? And once you eat that, you have your life lifespan is like thousands of years, and that's what the whole story is like. You know, not that we get off the beaten path, but like, you know, those are the stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh. He was trying to find the you know, the plant of life, and that's what he found it. But then a snake like slithered off with it when he was sleeping, right? So his whole thing was, that's the whole story of the Epic of Gilgamesh, you know. And he's fighting these big weird creatures like Enlil's bull, like this. You know, it's a crazy epic story, but you know, that's a whole different one. But yeah, like,
well, you see
mixing all these stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, you see a lot of when it comes to the medical field and different things of that nature. You see a lot of the symbology is the snake, right? You know, the staff with the two vines going around it, or the staff with the two snakes going around it, and it's kind of like
something like that.
Yeah, and like, dude, look at the Who that's like dictating what we do in our lives and what we can and can't do. You know, I'm not saying this is true, guys. I'm not saying this, but like, if we're talking about reptilians, we're on the theory, right? Like, isn't that right in your face? Like, you know, the medical, this entity that's like controlling our lives and dictating what we do, and it's medical, and it all goes back to, you know, to genetic engineering potentially of humans, or in the blood, right? Which brings it back to the vampires, is that, you know, maybe there's something in the blood. Maybe it's that humans are, you know, slowly but surely, they've been genetically modifying us to be more compatible with their sort of blood type, so that they can use us in certain ways, you know? It's kind of like organ donors and blood transfusions. And there's a movie that really disturbs me. It's what's the movie with Channing Tatum, and he's like a cat man? Oh, what's it called? Well, anyway, in that movie, humans were like created to like basically so that they can use us to extend people's lives. And that in that movie, they claim that, you know, there's infinite resources. The universe is like infinite, right? But the only thing that people care about once you kind of conquer not getting destroyed by, you know, natural occurring phenomenon is just extending your life. And that kind of goes back to the vampire thing, where, you know, if aliens, people say all the time, oh, what would aliens care about us? We're just ants. It's like, well, you know, you eat ants. Right? So I don't know.
I guess you do eat ants. Well, if you're an ant eater, damn it, Ash. I want to toss in real quick too. Just the ancient reptilians. They are the Slee Stack from Land of the Lost. I love that they like slip it into these old shows and like nobody notices, but they time traveled back to the time of the Cretaceous period or whatever with the dinosaurs, and they've got the Slee Stacks, kind of like this advanced reptilian humanoid race, kind of running the joint back then. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Costumes are ridiculous. Yeah, they're pretty hilarious.
Yeah, just to finish that off real quick. And you know, saying what you were saying about the, you know, the guys that do out of body, right? So there was a rabbit hole I went down one too, and there was these other people that talked about that too as well. The reason why those people are seeing them every time they go to space is because one of the reasons is from the stories that I've heard was that, and this is not saying that this is fact, but this is what it was. I heard is that the reptilians is an ancient race. They're one of the most ancient races in space. That they're actually the hierarchy are called draconans. You know, they're actually bigger and bulkier. And then the other reptilian, you know, I guess they have more like spikes or whatever, kind of like, you know, the lizards type here, you know, for male and female. But yeah, they're, and and they have different colors. So, I mean, I don't know how true that is, but if that's the case, everything else has got a hierarchy. So, I mean, it could be ranking, file suit. I mean, so, I mean, that wouldn't be anything unheard of if you're talking to different alien species. But what's interesting is that that race is one of the oldest ones. And it's, I don't know if they're the ones who plant seeds or what, but okay, so go back, like if I was going back to the Sumerian, and, I've heard people try to say that they're the reptilian, but I don't think so. Like I said, I believe that's the Agigi race, but you don't really find too much like skulls or anything. You got the elongated skull, right? Anything, I've looked too, and I had one picture that kind of looks like a reptilian skull per se, if anything else. But you don't really find anything like that, I mean, just not saying like, it's not, if you can't find it just like Bigfoot, I mean, you can't, no one's ever found that shit. But, if let's say that, like, but if they've been here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years is what they're saying, you got to find something, unless they do something different with their bodies. And then, of course, you're not going to ever run across something like that. They want to take it to their home planet or something and, bury them there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
It's weird that you don't ever, or like say, but it's weird too, though. So if I think they're the Agigi, that's when you come across the whole fallen angel thing, and that's, and you talk about giants. You find giant human bones, but you don't find giant reptilian bones. So what's the deal here? It's like because this planet's been different, been visited by, I'm pretty sure, by all kinds of different creatures, man.
Oh yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah. Where are all them skeletons at? That's a good point. Like no one can find a skeleton. All we got is fuzzy news anchors. I'm talking about transforming Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus blinking.
Deep. I don't know. Like I said though, man, and I ran across that shit in my life, and I'll put that on everything, man. What I seen, and I don't know if it was a reptilian or not, but there was two of them that I was serving with in the Navy, and one of them was two of them are different East and West Coast. And that shit blew my fucking mind, man. The second one, not so much, because I was already, it just, at first it kind of just like, fuck you too, man. Like, it was weird.
Can I tell the story? So I know the story, but, a lot of folks don't listen to every show. So you want to tell us that, just recap of that story real quick?
Yeah. Okay, so I served in the United States Navy, and I served in the Navy for 14 years. I made first class petty officer, and I don't know what fucking year it was, but okay, so what we do is you go to these classes to learn, what you have to learn for different ranks. I mean, because sometimes you got to cut ties from, some of the younger guys, right? You can't be such hang around with them, it's kind of like, they call it influencing or something else, But we go into these classes, all right? So there's probably like about 12, 15 petty officers there in a room, and we're being instructed by a senior class enlisted officer. She was a senior chief, okay? She's telling us about being a first class petty officer. So throughout it was a whole day long, and I after a while, she obviously, she was real, she was, military, she was being the senior, senior chief. But later on throughout the day, she kind of more relaxed, and that's when I seen her eyes. She looked at me, and her eyes, her pupils, and it's not just the white, it wasn't the white part of the eyes, just where the pupils were at. They closed a different direction. That, and then she blinked. Right? And I didn't see that shit. I mean, when I seen that shit, I was like, holy fucking shit, man. Like, I kind of like, in my mind, I was kind of startled, but at the same time, because I've been reading about all this stuff for many years, so I was kind of, but at first it's just kind of scared. What was I would say scared? It shocked me, right? I was shocked with it. So once that happened, I had to change the feeling inside of me, because I know if everything's true, that they could be able to search your feelings, kind of like the Force. They can read your mind or whatever. They can understand what your feelings and everything. So I set myself back in my chair, but knowing what I seen was fucking, like, I was still comprehending that in my own mind. But at the same time, I was telling her, because when she looked at, when she knows she did that, she kind of like looked away real fast and like, walked away from me while she was giving her, her speech. So in my mind, I'm trying to tell her, I want to see that shit a fucking again, right? But she stayed away from me the rest of the day. It was kind of like avoiding me, I'd ask her, I'd even try to, be more, more
vocal with her.
Be more vocal, right? So I asked questions. She would, but like she would answer me, but like every time after that, even after that too, because I was there. You're out of command for like about 3 or 4 years, and the rest of the year I had left there, it was always, it was like avoidance. She tried. I don't know if she could sense me, but she was like always, took care of business, and then she was gone. It was fucking weird, man. And then the second time when I was transferred over to the East Coast, it was in the morning time, drinking coffee, getting ready for muster. We always had a muster in a certain shop, because it was a bigger shop, and everybody would go in there. We'd rank up and give muster. But it was a younger sailor, and I walked in, and I was still kind of like waking up, because just getting there. I was the LPO. I had to get all the paperwork ready, make sure everybody's still there. If they're not, where they're at, whatever, mustered, So I walk into their shop, and I'm looking at him, and I just said, "What's up?" And he was telling me this story about how he was giving shit to this other sailor about how he could time travel. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right?
What the fuck? Where does that come from?
Like, and I said, what's up? And that's the first thing that was out of his mouth. And I said, so I looked at him, and I was like, what did you say? And he goes, yeah, man, I gave fucking, I can't remember his name. But he goes, yeah, I was giving him shit how I could time travel. And I was like, oh, yeah? And then I kind of like woke up, I was like thinking like, what the fuck is this guy trying to tell me? So I was like, oh, yeah, so what did he say? And he goes, oh, nothing. He was just like, I can't remember exactly what he told me, but then he looked at me, because his head was kind of down, looking at his coffee cup, the top of his coffee cup. And then when he looked at me on the side of his eyes did the exact same fucking thing. And I was like, what the fuck happened? That shit right there, I was like, man, they're in the fucking Navy too. They're in the military forces. They walk among us. When they tell us that they're saying that they walk among us, they're not saying that they just look like us, right? So this is where, I even delved deeper, with the whole, they could change, shapeshift and shit, like with the whole Thoth, the Emerald tablets and shit, man. When I read that shit too, that shit fucking even really blew my mind. Like how, the reason why they're here is because, they're actually brought here by people that are trying to do dark magic and shit, that they were trying to gain power. That's what it says, but I don't know exactly, it doesn't give you specifics. But, they're saying that, they're different vibration, and that's when they, the whole blood thing too. That's the other part about it, is that it has to, their sacrifice is like, when they, you give their self, when people say they sold themselves to the devil, is that they give themselves so these things can go inside of them and control them. So now they're inside here, and then they can start doing the whole body shape shift. So now they have a vessel that they could do this in. They can't do it without it, because they're just shadows, like how he says, they would move shadows in Atlantis. They look like shadows moving around. So, and that's how, they became here, but you can trap them inside the human body. And, when it says they're serpent headed when their veil is lifted. So that tells me that they use a certain vibration or a frequency so you can trap these things. What's so weird too is like in coming up with Hollywood, you talk about that story about like that. I think what is it called? A Quiet Place. You seen that one about those aliens? And that girl, she was deaf, and she put her little hearing aid next to a speaker, and that fucking speaker made a weird, freaky noise. Like you can hear like when a speaker or something, a microphone gets close to it, makes that weird fucking noise. Well, that thing freaks them out. So it's like, what I mean?
Feedback.
It's almost telling you that this shit can work. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. When Hollywood does this type shit, when I watch movies, I look. I don't know, man. Maybe it's me, but that's the way I think. I look into something else. Like, what the fuck are they trying to tell us now?
Yeah, that's a good one. I have no idea, and that's what I'm saying, right? So, like, as we get together and talk about these things, and this is why we've always done this. I've never seen that personally, right? But I don't discount the possibility. But then we have Kelly showing up, and he's literally telling us this story. I've heard this several times because, like I said, I asked him to tell it again because many people haven't heard this story, but he's seen it with his own damn eyes, right? Like literally his own experience. He's like, no, this shit's real, and I'll tell you what I saw, right? It's different. It's different when you get somebody not just speculating, like an actual eyewitness to this shit, and can say, look, this is what's going on. This is what I believe, and this is what I saw, right? It changes things. It changes things in your mind. It changes the whole conversation. So, as always, right? And Kelly, like we've been talking to Kelly for years, literally years, bro, right? Like, it's been years, man. You've been calling in forever. And that's what this is about, right? Getting together, and you kind of don't believe things until you hear somebody say, no shit, I saw this with my own eyes. And it suddenly changes your mind, right?
Yeah, man, because I don't know, man. I don't know what it was, but I know they're not fucking human. They look human, but they're not fucking human. And for me, when because like the first time I was like, all right, maybe it could have been the light, you know what I mean? But I'm a ufologist, man, and I'm into this shit. You know what I mean? I'm down every rabbit hole I can fucking find, whether it sounds stupid or not. I mean, I'll look into it. That's just the way I am, because I have to have. My sister makes fucking fun of me because she says. She calls me input like I need fucking like a robot, you know what I mean? Like, fuck, I need more information. Just head, you know? That's just the way I am. I don't know. I'm built that way. So when I do this shit, you know what I mean? Like, someone will post something, I have to fucking research the shit. You know what I mean? Because I'm not gonna just like put out stupid shit. That's not what I'm. I'm not a behind the chair type person. I'll fucking search. And I'm searching, and I'll search, and I'll search. Not just by engines, by books, by libraries. I look in that shit fucking everywhere. Right, but the thing about it, when I seen it the first time, I was like, all right. So I'm like, like with David Icke and everything, that shit was like, all right, fucking, it had me like, I was dumbfounded for a while. Like I was like, what the fuck, man? Am I sure? But when I went, okay, so and it was probably like a year and a half later, I was transferred over to the East Coast. Then when that kid did to me. And what he did to me with the conversation, too, which was fucking, that was like almost telling me your hunches or whatever you're thinking, dude, is right. And here it is. I'm going to give you your second fucking, a second glimpse of, that I'm telling you that you are right. And when he did that shit with his eyes, too, man, I'm telling you, I was like, holy fucking shit. They ain't lying, man. They are fucking mungus. And you hear the stories of like, Palladians or whatnot, or, they look humanized, or, you heard the story that we all heard the story with, Valiant Thor. He said he's from Venus. And he looked fucking human and shit too. He walked around. The only difference was he had 6 fingers is what they say. But, if there's something like that, but this whatever I saw was a shapeshifter, because they showed me that they were a shapeshifter. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a Palladian where they, I don't know, they had paler skin and fucking blonde hair or whatever, or like Valiant Thor with 6 fingers and shit. Something that kind of stands out or looks different, But this shit was totally different. I'm telling you, man, that shit changed. After that happened, the second one, I was like, all right, now I know, man. Well, after that, I started doing my own, video shit on YouTube. Like, I didn't have the thing that you have with the computer yet, right? I'm not, delving that much far into, how to run, all that stuff for the computers. It's going to be, I have to have more time for that shit, man. With my busy, I say I'm too busy, but like, here I am on the show with you guys, but should do, I want to do more, but man, like, because my shows too, they would end up like yours, 2-3 hours in. But again, conversation is, I could have for fucking days,
Yeah, exactly. And that's again, there are formats that are probably more like, friendly for discoverability, for marketing, for a lot of reasons, right? But you kind of don't get real conversations then, like it's just not. So I'm okay with kind of cutting out some of that, cut to the chase, and we're like super hits or Troubled Minds Tomorrow type of thing. But the conversations are better than that. They're like, man, Kelly's been around for a long time. Ash, you've been around for a long time. You guys know that it's you never know who's going to call. And we've had some people call and pull our legs and probably tell us some phony stories. But we've had some people call and be fucking real and tell you some stories that make you go, oh shit, right? Like, just like Kelly, like if that's real, then geez, right? Everything changes. The whole damn world changes. And it does become that upside down, doesn't it?
Dude, that changed my whole world when that happened. And for me, it was in the good part, because I know now that, because everybody say, they like, you feel like you're crazy or whatnot. But for me, it was more of like, and then, because after my near-death experience, and then after that happened, I know I'm so, and it's weird because I've always been about space, and I don't know if, like, they say, past lives or whatever, let's just say that too, because I don't ever doubt anything, right? That's why I'm always asking questions, but like, if there's a past life, man, it was somewhere else. It was a different planet. I know that. I know that, man, because that dream I had for a year straight, that shit was that was crazy too. I don't know, man. I don't like, I don't want to share this with you guys. Like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think that after that near death, I'm like, when I came back, and the same thing that with Greer talked about, it's like, you come back for a reason, and I don't know yet. Maybe this is it. Like, we're trying to give this information out to the listeners and everybody that's, here. But, man, sometimes it's like, even now when I'm talking, like, it's almost weird. I almost, like, want to cry. I have that feeling, but it's like an uplifting feeling of, like, something being lifted off,
Yeah, putting it out there. If you can't tell people what you saw, and you saw something that was absolutely amazing, I can understand that could be a dark thing to carry around with you. Thoughts on that, Ash? I don't know if you've actually heard Kelly tell that story before. It's been a while since he told it, but thoughts on that, seeing the reptilians and all that stuff?
No, it reminds me of, I don't want to say who it is in case someone is listening, they backtrack it. Let's say someone in my family knows someone who basically was drinking with them, and I've said this before, and he made them, he's like, I know the truth. And they're like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not going to tell you. And he didn't tell them for a long time. And then one day he's like, all right, leave your phones here. And they all put their phones down, they put it on the table, and they walk out in the woods. They walk hella far out in the woods. And he goes, I'm only going to say one thing. It's more like Men in Black than you think. And I've always, like, that story's always stuck with me. So when I hear stories like Kelly's, it's like, is there more? Is there just like, just under the surface, there's this whole world, and, we're just not privy to it. You know what I mean? And if you know anything about the stories of what's possible, of like aliens erasing your memories, or making you see things aren't there, or whatever, right? Then you realize that, like, the human memory and all this kind of stuff is is malleable, and then it becomes possible to kind of hide a secret that big. I mean, think about what humans have been able to achieve in the last 200 years. Smartphones, cars, I believe, all this stuff in such relatively short period of time, and fast forward like a couple thousand years, if you met a less advanced race than yourself, to them, you have godlike powers, magic, right? All these kind of magic and your morals, all these things. They probably wouldn't even understand them because the complexity of like what you understand and what are capable of. So I think that I think for people like Kelly, myself, you, Mike, and you guys who are listening, once you have enough information, then you wonder, well, what is on the other side of the unknown? What is reality? What is the soul? What happens when you die? Where are the aliens? Like, these are really big questions. And when you stew on them long enough, you realize that these questions are like more important than like Kim Kardashian's ass, right? Or like, even just like paying taxes. These are mundane things in comparison to these ideas. And that if any one of these ideas were advanced 5%, 10% towards truth, everything would be different. And I think that's kind of like there's like a nagging feeling of like, what the hell? So, to Kelly's story, if something like that happens to you, that's it. You're fucked. Like you can't go back to normal ever again, right? Like if it especially happens twice, you're fucked. That's it. But when everyone else around you is doing X and they can't see Y, you're going to question yourself. You're going to be like, am I crazy? But like, what's crazy is we're on this little planet hurling through space at like a bazillion miles per hour, orbiting other things that are going a bazillion. Like the sun is like, it's this pure energy. It's a fucking ginormous. And it's like, we have energy problems on this planet. It's like, huh, really? Do we? Like this kind of stuff. It's so yeah. I mean, you get a peek behind the veil, and it kind of drives you mad, like the Cthulhu thing, right? And so, bringing it back to vampire, I'm trying to.
We're so far off that train, it's fine. Whatever. I gotta say real quick, I'll confirm. Ash has been asking me 3 times a week for a year and a half. Am I crazy? So just to confirm, yeah, it's real. Yeah. And I tell him, I fuck with him like every other time. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry I went off the beaten path there, but
it's fine. It's fine. That's why we do the third hour. Third hour is for sloppy time, and sometimes it makes for the best conversations.
Yeah, that's the only thing that because starting from that path with like blood and everything, and then the reason, and then fall from all the ancient stuff. Yeah, but yeah, man, like I don't know, dude. I don't know, man. Like I don't know why I see UFOs a lot. I don't know why a lot of stuff happens.
Probably because you're looking, right? I think that, well, maybe.
Man, but listen to this, though, man. Like, there is some shit that sometimes happens, like, I don't even know how to like, there be times, okay, I'll give you, I don't know if I told this story yet, but, like, so at night sometimes I used to get I used to call them like I don't know fucking what okay, so I'll be laying on my bed, right, and you're like either you're coming to from being asleep or you're almost out going to sleep, right? So next thing you know, you feel like I don't know if you guys have animals, like, but if you ever felt a cat jump on a bed like real light, when you're not looking at it, but you could just feel it jump on the bed.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it feels like, and it's like 2 or 3, 4 of them, and I can hear them talking, like they're whispering. And the first few times, I kind of jump up, like, trying to, like, I don't know if it was a cat, like, like at first, because the first time it happened, like, so I try to, brush it off, like, with my blankets, at the same time, kind of like looking over there, but there's nothing. I was like, fucking didn't think nothing of it. But it just keep happening, like, throughout the times of my life. And not all the time, but, like, I don't know when, man, fucking, but and I don't know, man, the last time it was fucking weird. It was in the daytime, too. That's the first time it ever happened with that. But I could hear him, man. I could hear him talk, like whispering. I don't know if because they're so small I can't hear them, or they're just whispering. But I could, they literally, and this is so weird because, like, when I, flipped around to see if there was something there was nothing there. But then, so I laid back down, and they was like fucking with me, It was like, so they jumped on the bed again. So I waited and waited, to see if they would get closer. And every time I fucking, like, how fast, it didn't matter. They weren't there. That's the shit that almost kind of makes you think you're fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's like, it's happening to you. Like, it's not like you choose to, like, have these things happen to you or have these experiences, right? So, I've had what's it called when you're falling asleep? It's like sleep paralysis or whatever.
Yep.
In that state, once you get into that state, it's the Wild West for, like, what can happen to you in your mind and everything like that. So, I mean, yes, it could be explained in that way, or it could be explained that there are literally interdimensional entities that now you can interact with, or you're crazy, But either way, it doesn't ultimately it doesn't matter because, like, you're having that experience, right? And like that's cool, and I'm glad you're sharing that. It's like I've had some creepy. I had a nightmare where I got abducted, and it was, like, fucking horrible. And it wasn't. I was, like, into the abduction stuff, so I know my brain was primed for it, and it's the only time it's ever really happened. So I'm like 99% sure I was just fucking with myself. But I looked over at my fiance at the time, and I'm, like, trapped in the room, and I feel like there's something in the room, and I can't move. I was having sleep paralysis, and that's a horrible feeling when you can't move your body, and you're just looking around. And something was moving around the room, and I look over at my fiance, and her mouth is wide open, and, like, just completely out, mouth wide open. Most terrifying thing I can imagine seeing. And then I felt something, like, slip its arms underneath me and start dragging me away. And that's when like, that free fall feeling of sliding off the bed is when I woke up, and I just stood up, and I was like, what the fuck? Just real loud in my room in my underwear by myself, and yeah, man, like, crazy shit happens.
Crazy shit goes down. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. We got to wrap this up, gentlemen. As always, you guys know we're welcome to continue this offline. This conversation continues. I like to call this a great conversation because, it's what it is. It is what it is. Like I said, I could be mumbling to myself in the corner, as could all the rest of you guys, and we're not. We're here. We're sharing ideas. We're talking to each other. We're hearing stories. Anything else you want to add to that, Kelly? I hate to cut you off. I know you're kind of giving us the deets, man, spilling your truth here. So I hate to cut you off in that regard. So if you want to continue and finish, by all means. But let's think about wrapping it up. How about that?
No, let's wrap it up because that actually drained me a lot because that took a lot of weight off my chest, man. And I just want to say thanks for listening. That was. Because sometimes, it's like, it's kind of hard to even talk to family about it. So I want to give you real quick, okay? So my near-death experience, I forgot to add this little bit to it. So when my older brother, right? We're only like fucking 11 months, 2 weeks apart, right? And I told him that story about my near death experience and what I seen and shit. And do you know what he fucking went and told me? He's like, yeah, I remember that night. He goes, you walked out of the room, you lay down back down on the bed because we shared rooms, and he goes, I was kind of worried about you, sick, so I was watching you, seeing if you were fucking breathing and shit. He goes, and you know what you did? He goes, you stood up in the middle of the fucking room between the two beds and you started spinning around in the circles. You raised your hands up about shoulder length and you started speaking some fucking language I'd never even heard in my life. He goes, and you just kept spinning and spinning and spinning, and he goes, and you landed on the bed on top, kicked your ass off of me. He goes, that shit, he goes, fucking scared the shit out of me. And I was like, when he told me that story, it kind of even fucking blew my and like, we're like, this, he told me this was like, what, maybe like 4 years ago, and we've had, I've never, like I said, I never told him that story, and when I did tell him that story, he told me he went even more crazier.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Wait, you did that and he didn't tell you this whole time?
Yeah,
he kept it to himself? That's wild. Yeah. That's wild. Yeah, I used to sleepwalk really bad when I was a kid, and I would just fucking wake up somewhere randomly. And I didn't know I was sleepwalking. And so I'd be like, why did they put me, like, why am I outside? Who brought me outside? Like, why did my parents take me outside? That's stupid. Or I'd wake up downstairs, or, and there was times where I'd like come upstairs and I'd talk gibberish to them and hang out with them for like 15 minutes and then go back to sleep. And I had no idea what was happening. And, yeah, it was a pretty wild experience, but I did not quite what you did. So your near death experience provoke this?
I don't know, man. See, that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's crazy. That's cool. My brother had a near death experience, and he's more attuned to the other side, and he claims like he'll just get the feeling something's there, and he tries to communicate with it. Sometimes it communicates back, and he says some shit like, I'm into all the woo and stuff like that, and he'll say things to me that I've heard in woo circles that I know he doesn't research, and I'll be like, "Where'd you hear that?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, something like told me. It like came to me and told it to me in my dream or whatever," and he said he didn't really have any of these experiences until his near death. And then it kind of like opened the door. And I hear that all the time.
Yeah, because like I said, man, I had the feeling of like when I was coming back. When I was back, it was like, I don't know, man. To me, it was like, after years later on, after trying to study this shit, it was, they say that, you're here back for a reason. And like I said, I don't know yet, man. I don't know what the fuck is. And after that, too, that's when like I said, it was weird. I don't know, man. I see and hear, like, I would say, fuck, I don't know how to put it, man. Sometimes it's just, let's just wrap this up, because I'm just kind of like, I just thanks for listening, guys, and I appreciate it.
You got it, bro. You got it, bro. Go ahead, collect your thoughts. You're part of the fam. You're welcome back anytime to tell us whatever you want to tell us, and it's our pleasure to listen. We'll see. I said that. Listen. I can't even do it right. But yeah. So let's do wrap it up. Final thoughts here, Ash. I'm going to play some music in just a sec, but let's get out of here.
Hey guys, it's Halloween. It's October, right? All the spooky, creepy, crawly things are out, and they're. And we're talking about spirits and ghosts and vampires and werewolves and all kinds of stuff, right? And in order to do that stuff, you take a little glass of the maybe juice, and that's what makes it fun, right? That's what makes Halloween fun. And as we kind of like have fun this month and we talk about different things, we'll explore different ideas and you guys are here. If you're here, we're here to talk about this kind of stuff. And this is the kind of stuff you can't talk about normally. Like they won't, if you go to work or you tell your friends, and trust me, I've had that experience personally where I bring some stuff up to people and they just look at you sideways, and and this is not that place. This is that place where we can talk about anything. We can look at everything, and and just explore the true nature of reality. Let's not limit ourselves. Let's get the conversation going. It's a great conversation tonight, and thank you guys for being here. And appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good night.
Oh, all right. Let's get the hell out of here. Thanks again, Kelly, for sharing. I know it's sometimes it's hard to share these stories, but you're among family. We appreciate you sharing. Appreciate you telling us what's going on in your reality. And like I said, it helps us. It educates us as well. It makes us realize that we may not be seeing the things that we're seeing, or we may indeed. So that's what this is about. Thanks again for sharing and being part of this. Everybody out there, you guys know the drill. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Ash, are you on the show tomorrow? Yay or nay?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to be doing a hefty dose of the Maybe Juice tomorrow, so we're going to have Ash on the show tomorrow. Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll be back for that, and if you don't know what the Maybe Juice is, there it is. Indeed, tonight it is green, because we were talking about reptilians, and why the hell not? So we'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Pacific. More Troubled Minds. Thanks to Kelly. Thanks to Ash for finishing up the show with us tonight, and let's get the hell out of here. As we finish, you guys know the drill. Be sure, be strong, be true. Take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Don't forget, the only significant influence humans have is on other humans. And as a result of that, let's not be shitty to each other. And thanks again. You guys are the best. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. And one more time, thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night. We're here. Music's playing. About to get out of here.
How many times tonight did you want to say, I love you, man? You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. Thanks, Daryl.
I love you.
Back at you. I'm glad we can get together and appreciate each other. It's a good thing.
Great night. Right. Like everyone, you know what I want to say too? I believe everybody in here tonight. I've never ever disbelieved any person that's spoken here. I think everybody's telling the truth. Nobody's lying or making up stories. You know what I'm saying? I think everyone that calls in is telling the truth. Well, it's maybe except one person. Yeah.
Thanks, James. I know. James is saying we can still hear you all. The outro music's playing, just so you know. We're still streaming.
Oh, okay. Well,
You're
I don't
okay.
think I regret anything I said.
Yeah, no, there's nothing there. There's nothing that was private. All right, we're going to end this. Let's end this sucker. And we're going to go keep drinking some Maybe Juice here with Daryl and Ash and Kelly. Thanks for sharing your stories. We're out of here. Thanks again. Have a great night, guys. Be sure, be strong, be true. We'll catch you tomorrow night. All right, I'm going to kill the music and let's just end it. Let's just do it.